All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the January 14th, 2020 school board meeting of the Sherwood School District. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Our first order of business is to adopt the agenda.
I move we adopt the agenda.
A second.
I'd like to table one thing on here. The fall linkage meeting summary notes. I haven't had a chance to compile all of them yet, and so I'd like to table that until our next meeting in January. So, no objections?
No.
Okay, so can I take a motion to adopt the amended agenda?
I move we adopt the amended agenda.
Okay.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. Dr. Davis, can you remind us of our overarching result?
Yes, our overarching result for the School District of Sherwood is our students are leaders who challenge themselves to grow and achieve academically, pursue their passions, navigate change, learn continuously, and contribute to the common good.
Thanks. Awards and recognitions tonight?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to read a proclamation from our state superintendent, Dr. Stanford Taylor, regarding Adult School Crossing Guard Recognition Week, which is this week, January 13th through the 17th. The proclamation reads, whereas Wisconsin's adult school crossing guards provide an invaluable service in helping to ensure the safe passage of our youngest, most vulnerable pedestrians, children walking between home and school, and whereas adult school crossing guards typically serve with a dedication that discounts the rigors of harsh weather, split shifts, and heavy traffic, and whereas the adult crossing guards have served communities to make them secure for more than 5 decades, and whereas adult crossing guards add to the effectiveness of school safety effectiveness of school safety patrol members with whom they often serve and whose activity they help direct. And whereas adult school crossing guards help reinforce in the minds of young people as they assist with the importance of traffic hazard identification and safe street crossing behavior. So therefore be it resolved that the state superintendent declare the week of January 13th to 17th, 2020, Adult School Crossing Guard Week. Time to recognize and thank the many adult crossing guards whose commitment make a difference in the lives of the children for the Wisconsin Public Schools. So we just want to congratulate our crossing guards. Give them a high five or a hot chocolate when you see them this week, if possible, and thank you for that. In other recognitions or announcements, I'd like to recognize that we have 4 candidates set to run for the 2020 school board election. Candidates are Pablo Muirhead, Paru Shaw, Rashonda Stevens, and Clark Warren. So we thank you for your continued interest in service. Because we have 3 seats that are available and 4 candidates, there won't be a primary that'll be necessary. So thank you for running, and good luck. Athletically, congratulations to SHS 9th grader Emma Bailey, who's placed 1st overall for the SHS girls varsity ski team in the meet against Cedarburg, Homestead, and Slinger on January 2nd. Emma is now qualified to participate in the Wisconsin High School Ski Championships in lacrosse on February 16th and 17th. So great work, Emma, and good luck at the championships. Congratulations to SHS students and cross-country runners Lucas Florsheim and Bella Lozier, who recently were informed that they were nominated as Athlete of the Year in cross country by the Journal Sentinel. The award ceremony is scheduled for May, and the winners in each category will be announced at the event. So congratulations to both students on their nominations. And additionally, I want to congratulate Lucas Florsheim, who was just named the Division II Athlete of the Year by the Wisconsin Cross Country Coaches Association. So congratulations to Lucas. And that concludes the announcements for tonight.
Great, thank you. So first up tonight for student achievement and results is an opportunity to hear from the Mentoring for Leadership group at SIS.
You can pull some chairs up.
Yeah, we want to pull some chairs around.
There we go. Yeah, thank you.
All right, so we'll play a little musical chairs when it's time for some reflections and sharing from the group. My name is Sam Coleman, and I serve as the Director for Equity with the Sherwood School District. And I have Sam Pristwick.
Hi, I'm Sam Pristwick. I'm a special education teacher at SIS.
The Mentoring for Leadership group, well, first I want to acknowledge that January is recognized as National Mentoring Month. In 2002, the Harvard School of Public Health recognized locally and nationally January as being a month to observe and lift up the importance of mentoring both in school and in the higher education fields. We also acknowledge that here as a district, and Ms. P and I have had conversations since the beginning of the year about ways to leverage mentoring as a direct strategy to improve the learning and experiences specifically for Black students within our district. So in response to identifying students based on their school perception surveys and information that they shared about their belongingness and connectedness and access to a trusted adult, we saw an opportunity there to create or establish a convening weekly for a group of young men who we believe would benefit from this mentoring opportunity. So since then, we've been able to meet each Monday during the guided study period offered to each of these students. And we just wanted an opportunity to just, first of all, recognize and affirm our belief and our commitment to mentoring as a deliberate strategy to support student learning and growth. But then also just highlight the importance of this type of work at SIS and the benefit of potentially expanding that across the district.
Yeah, and I guess my role in this is just being like the person who's there every day with the kids and just being that connection for them when Mr. Coleman isn't there, and knowing that we want this to transfer throughout the rest of the school day, throughout the rest of the school week, that they have a safe space in my classroom, which is where they meet, and that they have a person in the school every day with them. And also just making sure that those lessons that they learn with Mr. Coleman transfer over. So Mr. Coleman sends me a recap of what the boys talk about and the challenges they do every week. So I know exactly what they've learned. I know the takeaways they had, and I can connect with them throughout the week and make sure they're keeping up with that and sticking to it. And again, just having that safe space. And I know the boys, I hope that they feel welcome to come in my room, and they have come in there just to hang out, just to do some work. So I'm glad that they've applied this to more than just those Monday meeting times.
And then before we hear from the young man, I also want to thank Mr. Mike Joint just for his support with the group and just his, right? I don't know if you wanted to share anything as well, but I just thank you for your support with the group and just being able to remove any barriers that may have been there or may arise with us being able to meet with the group. Yeah. Is there anything you wanted to?
No, just okay. I think not only the importance of mentoring, but also student voice. That's something that's come through from this, not just through Mr. Coleman, but also Mrs. Pristwick, being able to communicate what the student needs are, and just the importance of the kids having an adult that they can talk to about that. There's a good group of kids. So I remember when Mr. Coleman came over at the beginning of the year, we were talking about like, who are the leaders in the building? We were standing in the lunchroom, I think, and I was like, well, that's the loudest table over there. But I kind of wish they were the leaders.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where this started. And so a lot of these guys have really stepped up. It's a short 2 years in SIS, but an important time of growth. So I just, again, appreciate the work and then the opportunity for the students to lend their voice to our improvement processes.
So enough of hearing from us. I'd like for us to step out of the way and just maybe leave a couple minutes for the members of the Mentoring for Leadership group to share. All right. So musical chairs. Let's go quickly. Please start with your name and grade.
My name is Linnell, and I'm in 8th grade, and I look forward to meeting on Mondays because I feel like I can really be myself when I'm with my classmates and brothers, because like when I'm in like regular class, like teachers expect me to act the same way as others and not be myself, and like they expect us to do this, and then like when we don't do this we get in trouble. So that's just the one time I can really be myself and like just have fun throughout the week.
Thank you.
My name is Davion, and I'm in 8th grade. And I really like being here. Mentorship is important to me because being a mentor, it helps you like with your students, and like being like a student, the mentorship oh God, how do I say it? The mentorship helps, and it like submerges like onto you, and like, you know, the mentor can like teach you stuff, and you know, can help you a lot. Like whatever the mentor teaches you, you can use that in like your growth and your mindset and stuff. So yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Edmund. I am a 6th grader at Bluff Elementary School. It's kind of why we should have this at the elementary schools is because we don't know what's going on in every black person's life and what's going on in every black person's universe, or whatever you guys want to call it. It's kind of like I've kind of felt alone in my school because there's only 4 black people in my classroom, and sometimes, like a couple of years ago, I got bullied by a white person, and they said I would be cool if I was white. So I thought maybe I should act more whiter. So I would go to school with acting like a proper voice, but it actually kind of sounded girly to me. So it kind of felt like I was just alone in this void with people I really didn't know. But coming here today kind of makes me feel like I have a voice, and I can be spoken by other people. And my brother here, he's one of my very own mentors because he teaches me a lot, and my mom is one of my very own mentors. They're here to guide me to excellence. So when I feel like I'm at school, it doesn't feel like I'm guided to excellence. It feels like I'm guided to loneliness. So I just feel alone at my school with nothing to do, just reading and listening and doing whatever. But when I come here, I feel like I have a voice. I have a voice. I am able to speak with my black fellow people. And it's amazing.
I'm Alex. I'm in 8th grade, and I think this group has a positive impact on me because, like, it's teaching me leadership and like how to be like more of a team player, and it's also helped me like keep my cool because I used to like get mad easily, and it wasn't like, and then people would like drift away from me because like I would be like mean. I would be like calling people names. I would be like pushing and shoving people. So like this group has helped me with that.
Hello, I'm Sam, and I'm an 8th grader. One of the benefits of the mentoring group is that we work together to complete challenges, and we learn about leadership and teamwork, because teamwork is one of the most important things in the world right now. Because you need like friends to help you out, and if you don't, it would be a harder time. Like this group is like I can finally have like friends that I can call brothers and all that, Like, we bond a lot, and we can help each other out when we're not in the group.
Yeah. You can add it.
So I just wanted to add something on like mentorship. My mom is a mentor, and like I don't really have a dad, and like she is my mom and dad because she helps me, and Mr. Coleman is like a mentor because he helps us do these challenges. And so the challenges help us face with like real world and like what's gonna happen in the real world, and some of the stuff that happens in the real world to us, it's just cruel because like we're people too, and it's just like it's just really sad. But thanks for being our mentor.
All right, one more. And then if there are questions that you all have.
Yeah, going on what Davion was trying to say. Yeah, because after every time we do a challenge, Mr. Gorman always asks us, like, what's the life lesson that we learned from doing this challenge, and, like, what do we take away from this, and then, like, what did we learn, and, like, what can we use for the real life after we get out of school and stuff.
So I appreciate just each of the young men being vulnerable and taking a risk to be transparent about something that is very sacred to us. I've actually also been able to engage some alumni from SHS to come in and work with the students. Also, young black men who have come through the district and maybe didn't have an opportunity to feel that connectedness, and so they also come back and help to facilitate some of the challenges. And we always affirm the importance of holding that space as sacred. So I thank each of them for being comfortable talking about something publicly that I think privately we hold really close to our hearts. And so I want to just thank you all for that. I know you have something you want to share, and then I'll, in the interest of time, I'll yield. All right.
To add on to what Linnell and my brother just said, it's kind of discrimination that some of us go through at our schools, and some people just don't notice it. The children there have been around people that have called other people Negroes and everything, so it's kind of like whatever goes off in that house, they bring it to school and bring it out on the black people that are at that school. It's not different from whoever you are or who you are. They only look at what your skin color is, and that's all they look at, because it's like you don't matter to them. It's like you don't have a word or a place to say anything to them because you're irrelevant. No person should be irrelevant, because if we were all irrelevant, this earth wouldn't matter. So we, as all of us, need to step up and see what's going on in the elementary schools, the high schools, the intermediate schools, and also life.
And so let me just say this. I know I said that was it, but so I am sorry that you felt that way, but you do matter. You matter to me, certainly. And there are adults who see you, and I think it's important to see you for your identity. And when I see you as a young black boy, there's nothing negative about that. There's nothing derogatory about that. That you should be proud of your identity and proud of who you are. So when I see you, I see so much to be proud of. All right. I know we took up a little more time than we initially planned, but I wanted to make sure to give everybody who wanted to speak an opportunity to weigh in and do so.
what's been like especially for anyone who wants to ask or answer this, what's been the biggest benefit for just building, making yourself a better person? What's been the biggest benefit for you from this?
The biggest benefit is getting to work with other people. It's more of you getting to work with other Black people. It's not just that. It's you're making more friends, and you're more known. It's more of a, like you said, it's more of a benefit than, it's more of a learning than just coming here on a Monday and just seeing a bunch of other people. You get to learn more about these people and what they're going through.
And it's about building character, using these challenges as, challenges in real life, because we're gonna face these, and we're not gonna try to hide from them. We're just gonna, even if they do happen, we're gonna live on them and learn and build on that. So, we're not gonna take it as a failure if somebody is racist to us. We're just gonna take it as a learning experience and cherish it. I don't think. You can use
Something that I take away from this group is that I can be with people I can trust and people of my color. Then it's being with people who are not and wouldn't really understand what I'm going through. And like in this group, I can share how I feel and all that. Like I can learn how to be a better person in this group, how to be a better leader, and how to help out my friends and brothers and all that.
I just wanted to say thank you guys. I mean, your words were remarkable and powerful, and I know really hard to be like talking to a bunch of people and adults in this kind of space, and you guys did an amazing job. And thank you to Mr. Coleman and to Mr. Joint and to Miss
Pursuit.
P. I was gonna try it then, because I thank you guys for making that space available to these students. It's obviously been a really powerful experience for them. I wanted to kind of just follow up on Edmund's comment about doing this at the elementary, and this is maybe to you, Mr. Coleman, about kind of what's going on, what the plans are maybe for the elementary school or the high school.
So some of the conversations with school leadership and staff have been around identifying a person who could sponsor and support a group like this at our schools. One of the real challenges that we have is the lack of racial diversity in our faculty at schools. That would make it a little more difficult to be able to identify a person within the school that would be able to facilitate a group like this. But what Ms. P and I have been talking through is just ways that alliances can be built between teachers who might presently be in the building, but there may be somebody from another school, or ideally it shouldn't be me. Ideally we want to find members of our school faculty and school communities who can support in this way. And so I'll say that that's a challenge right now, because when we are looking for individuals to serve in that space, we come up significantly short.
Mm-hmm. Have we thought about just pairing a staff member with a community member? Because it seems to me like there's an urgency to get this program expanded, particularly in the elementary school. And so I'm wondering what other, I appreciate your comments about the trouble with finding someone specifically in staff, but I can't imagine there's not people in the community that would want to support this, and we need to find them sooner rather than later. So I hope that's a priority.
I think Davion wants to say something.
I have a question. Not really a question, but like a statement. I really hope this gets far, because this has happened before. I know this has happened before. Like people talking about this, and nobody has did anything about it. And I'm just saying, I really hope this gets far and this gets to a lot of people. And I hope a lot of people cares because, people too.
I was actually going to say something different until you just spoke, and I thank you for saying that because I have the same hope you do, but I also have a lot of optimism because of you, because of what you just said. So you guys have a great opportunity to lead the way, and I'm pretty optimistic that you're on the right track. Regarding the community member partnering too, I know that we probably have a lot of staff that do want to help, but to your points, it's the students that look at the staff, right? So if we can partner with them, I know there's a lot of teachers that would want to try to figure out how to help this grow. But to your point, and to use Linnell, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here in the strategy session that we had the other day. You made a comment that stuck with me, and that was, I appreciate Mr. Coleman because he looks like me and he lived like me. So I think that's pretty important to keep in mind, and you guys speaking up and making sure that this carries forward is pretty important. So you're on the right track for sure.
Okay. So I have like a comment. Like Davion said, I really do hope this gets far, and I really hope we spread this around, not just in the Short district, in all the districts, because in all over the world, because this shouldn't. There's no reason we should meet as a group because we feel like Black people are not equal with other people. We should be equal with other people because we're all human beings. We're not different from any other white person or any other Black person, Asian person, any race. It's so weird to feel like no one has a chance because they're color. You can be a person of color, a person of any color, but you have to live your color the right way.
Thank you. That was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
I was just saying if like some students could be. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for coming.
Have a great night.
Maybe they should MC all of our meetings.
Actually, this one I need over here.
I think you would.
Sure. Thank you. Okay, up next is our first of 3 opportunities for public comment. Please state your name and address.
Linnell Brockman, 4050 North Downer Avenue. I wanted to share with you, my kids go to St. Robert's, and they had, I don't know if you guys know, but they had a threat yesterday at the school for, it was called in the morning, and I don't have a ton of information, but it was called in the morning, and so they had to do like a soft lockdown or whatever, and then they sent out later in the day communication as to what had happened. And unlike things that have happened in our district, I didn't think twice about anything that happened yesterday at St. Robert's because the principal there had spent time, she sat down with and walked through the safety plan that they have with the parents, and went, page by page, line per line, explaining what they would do if in fact there was a threat or any kind of emergency in the school. So there was no questions to have, and it ended up, being, I don't know exactly what happened, but I mean, like, they called the police and were able to find out what the threat was, and there wasn't any further things that needed to be done. So with that in mind, I'm coming back to you because the last time I was here, I asked some questions, and I have not heard from anyone regarding the questions that I asked. And one of them was about our safety grant. I wanted to know, how we decided what we chose to take in them, and also why or how we have gotten around having our doors unsecured at the high school, because that's in the safety grant in both of them, and it says that we have to secure our doors. And there's, I have those documents now, and there's not a waiver in the documents saying that we are allowed to have them open. So I'm still looking for that answer, like where, why the doors are open, are unsecured, because it says right in there.
So
they would be.
Okay, so we don't have safety on our agenda for today, so we will have it for next meeting. But I will. I was under the impression that somebody from the board had talked to you about that, but I will reach out to you and talk to you about that.
The questions that I asked were directed towards you and Mr. Davis, and I haven't heard anything from either of you about. So the questions that I have, they're not some. So I can't bring them up during public comments.
No, because it's not agended, so I can't respond to them. So, but I'm happy to. I'll be in touch again with it. I thought somebody else had talked to you about it, but I'm happy to talk to you about it.
Okay, so the concerns that I have are only allowed to be privately told to the school board unless you decide to put safety on the agenda for the next school board meeting, because I'm trying to understand.
So, so we can't talk about items that are not on the agenda during a public meeting.
Okay.
So.
Like you can talk about them, but we can't answer questions or like make decisions about them.
Yeah.
Because otherwise other people might have wanted to like be part of that conversation.
Okay. So I can just let you know that I want, but you weren't going to answer me. Okay, I got that.
No,
okay.
Yeah.
So the other part of it was the safety plan. That is something that I wanted to find. If someone can get back to me, I'd like to know who authored our safety plan, because that I'm not seeing a date or an author on it, on the document itself, and I'm not seeing where it was approved by the board. And that question I have asked, and I haven't been able to get an answer for that either. And I also want to understand why the police chief has some things were different in his copy, because they should be the same. And so if you can help me, like, I'm not sure I understand why they're supposed to be the same. So, I mean, I'm sure I have, so who would I get these answers from then?
So I will respond to you tomorrow with what I know, and then I can find out the other ones.
Okay, so the safety, so the, from talking and asking questions, because I wasn't able to get any of them, I was told by the Department of Justice that if our doors weren't secure, we're kind of risking our funding that we have received from the state for safety. And so that's why I'm asking. Like, I'm trying to, wasn't able to, get any information from asking questions and reaching out to you guys. So it doesn't seem that, that's a huge question I have, is like what we're doing and why, and why we think we're not having to do that. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other public comment? Okay. All right, so first up for district operations is an update on our facilities design and budget.
Yes, so I'll ask Teresa Wadzinski and Andre Lorenzen to come up from EUA and Myron Construction, just to give the board an update on where we are. We completed our design phase, and so posted materials include the floor plans to each building. All of the feedback that we've received from staff and community members through our process are included in those floor plans, along with the budget estimates that Myron Construction has put together. So in your documents, you have a master, kind of an overall list, and then a detailed list per building. to those budget items. So just wanted an opportunity to just give you an update and hear from Teresa and Andre, and then be able to answer any questions that you have on that.
Yeah, so I didn't have a formal presentation on the design update. Other than the plans being refined, not a lot has changed since schematic design, with the exception of after the parent focus group for students with disabilities met at Lake Bluff October. We did update one of the comments that came from a parent in that meeting was regarding why are we not doing work to one of the special ed rooms in the high school, and so that work is in the documents now. It's included in the budgets that Andre will present, but it's taking one of the main special ed rooms, and it was an old face lab, so it was an old foods lab. You had 5 or 6 little kitchens in there, and they weren't being used, and so it's renovating that room to have sort of an apartment area so that kids are able to use equipment and kind of teaching them to do basic, not survival skills, but to live on their own life skills. Yeah. And so that is one change to the scope. But other than that, certainly if you have any questions, we can pull up the plans and zoom into a specific area, but I'm guessing you're more interested in the dollars, but.
Do we know, I guess, what the budget impact of that special ed room, like how much we're spending on that?
It's not isolated.
It's not isolated too much. I think it was, I think we pinned a couple grand. It was like 10 grand for casework. So again, as you can see in the
demo.
Yeah, plus the demo. So again, with the development of the drawings, our budget develops and there's ebb and flows. So which you see the detail here, which you saw before, detailed in the master. Of course, everybody goes to the back and looks at the bottom line. I'm pleased to say that we're within budget. We're showing 100,000 over, but if you take that in context on 58 million construction, that's 0.17%. So I think it's very good. We're on the right track. The scope is getting defined. Budgets are getting defined. We're still carrying some allowances that still need to be flushed out. But we're definitely on the right track, and our schedule is being met as well for design.
So the biggest chunk of that went up, obviously, I think, is the allowance for the owner's consultant.
So yes.
Yeah.
And so, what kind of, can you give us some examples of how, when you went through that budget, we were able to get there without hopefully risking anything too significant?
The change for that allowance, you can see the change. We had 25,000 last time. It's 500,000 this time.
Right.
But you also notice the furniture budget that we had. That's in the owner's line.
Okay.
That was reduced down to 1.7 to 1.225. So that's where
that's kind of where
it swapped out.
Okay.
Exactly.
And I guess, Clark, I'll just tell you that during the process, the 3 years that we did this, furniture was something that was always pretty low on people's lists of things that they really wanted.
Okay.
So it was a good place for us to. I feel like, given what we talked about in those 3 years, to reduce the amount.
Gotcha.
Right.
It's also an easy one that you can add back in, quite honestly, if the numbers do come in well and the.
In favor one bid day.
Yep.
So
okay.
We can react pretty quickly after that and say, let's put more money into once we're within the referendum, we can say, yep, we have some savings, let's put that back into the FFE furniture and equipment.
So are some of the heavier allowances that could be reduced based on once walls get opened up, or asbestos abatement,
so right now
or what are some of the bigger buckets there?
Yeah, there's a bucket down here that's fairly large, which is 2.7 million, which is asbestos. Again, these are older buildings. We definitely want to carry that type of allowance because you never know what you're going to find when you open the wall or an insulation piece or even the walls themselves.
Yeah, there's a pretty hefty allowance for the pool as well, because we don't know what we're getting into until we can drain it. We can't take it offline into the
SHS
pool. Yep,
pool.
the SHS pool. Yep.
Yeah, and from the last budget, just some details how we get there. We actually did increase that by about 97,000 because we are finding when we did the more detailed scoping of that, there might be some little more soft spots. So we wanted to reflect that in our budget and kind of be as accurate as possible. So
one of the other things that went up was some bad soils at Lake Bluff. So we've got the soils report back that we were hoping we could just overlay the asphalt, and we cannot due to the unsuitable soils. And so that is another one that went up, and other things went down. And
where was that at?
Can you explain that a little bit more and tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, it's just the structural integrity of the subgrade.
So
is
not
what
bad
that,
soil,
yes.
like contaminated.
No, I'm sorry, no,
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
at
yeah,
all.
I mean,
It
right,
just
just so we're
means
clear
that-
Clarify that, yeah.
The
Thank you.
size of the pebble that the
Gotcha.
asphalt is sitting on, especially, just making sure that the asphalt's not gonna have to shift.
There was some concern, if I remember correctly, too, about the weight of vehicles being on the Lake Bluff playground, too. Have we,
And that's part of it. If we just mill it, kind of grind it up and pave over it, that's where you'll see problems.
Okay.
If we don't do the extra step of taking it off, putting additional stone layer, a nice thick stone layer like you see in the typical road construction, and then pave over it, that's gonna get your stability to bridge over that. And yeah, with the heavier traffic on it, without doing this, I think you would see issues down the road.
So it's built in.
That's built in.
Yeah, it's built into this.
Yeah, so again, details are getting refined. Some numbers have gone up, some have gone way down as we've honed in on the scope and.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think the playgrounds are necessarily reflected as a line item here, but I wondered what the status is in terms of the plans for the design work at both and footprint, et cetera.
So we actually have, we had a set of RFPs that went out today, and we have another set that'll be going out later this week or early next. So we're moving forward with, at Lake Bluff, the PTO or a parent group, Play Lake Bluff, I believe, had engaged with a landscape designer, a nature-based playground. And there's some momentum with that, and then things were put on hold because the referendum process was starting. And so we are issuing an RFP to landscape designers for the kindergarten playground at Lake Bluff. Some of the original plans included quite a bit more site area than what we currently have. They were taking out an accessible or a sidewalk that we need to get from one building to the other, and so just scaling back the amount to be more equal to what is currently there, but that would be nature-based. And then the other RFP for the playground, the bigger playground at Lake Bluff and the playground at Atwater, would be an accessible playground, but what you might think of as more traditional playground equipment. And then with that, those companies, those vendors are submitting a proposal. Then they're going to meet with the student group, and then they're going to update their proposal, and then the district will be able to evaluate those.
Where are we, this may be getting too specific yet, but do we know as far as like accessible surface versus like wood chips as their decision? Because I know that affects the budget quite a bit.
Yeah. Honestly, we don't yet. There will be a combination of both. It's one of those things that the companies that are submitting a proposal, if they propose all rubberized surface, that means less equipment. I don't know that that's always the best solution. I think an elegant blending of the rubber with other either chips or other surfaces is the right solution. That's why we'll get the proposals and we'll get to see for the big Lake Bluff and the Atwater, it went to 5 different companies. So we should see 5 different proposals of equipment and solutions as far as what they would recommend for that amount of that surface. So as of right now, we don't know like quantities, percentages, but we will soon.
I know at Lake Bluff, there's quite a few drainage issues associated with the playgrounds, especially the little playground. Well, both of them really. Is that a separate? Does that come out of the playground budget to fix those?
We
issues?
do have the drainage as part of this. It's not part of that allowance.
Part of the
so
site improvements.
It's captured in
Okay.
here for the site.
Yeah,
Work,
so that'd be different.
Repair some of that drainage.
To fix all of those
Yep.
muddy fields.
Yeah, so the idea is that's part of the site improvement for Lake Bluff in general. Let's get that done and then construct the playgrounds like after that, after those solutions have been arrived at. So.
Perfect.
And then can you remind me the fields that are adjacent? So at Lake Bluff, there's a softball field and maybe a little like a baseball field as well, and then at Atwater there's the baseball field. Are we putting like new turf or anything? Is being left alone?
No,
Okay.
that's
grass.
That's what I thought. Somebody. Okay. All right.
So can you, I guess one of the things that's, I guess wasn't in here or is the kind of like the timeline, which I guess I could have gone back to the, that long spreadsheet, but are
So-
we, I know last time this was like when we were expecting to get this budget update.
Yep.
So kind of like, can you walk us through like if
Sure.
we're still on
Yeah,
track for the timeline?
So back to the timeline, we are in the third phase of design, which we call construction documents, which really means most of the decisions are made, and we're just working feverishly with our engineers to finalize drawings. So the Atwater and Lake Bluff and the EEC documents are being completed January 31st. They'll be sent to Myron and the district. Myron gets a week and a half to develop work groups and
Scope of work.
Scope of work,
Yep.
yes.
So we set the plate for the bidders, saying we would like you would like to bid earthwork. This is what we want you to include in your pricing, and then they fill out the bid form. So we compile that and put that in part of the specification, so it references the contract documents complete. That takes that 2 week, and then we put it out to bid. So it's going to be around the second week of February for bidding.
And then the drawings hit the streets, as we like to say. So in the meantime, when Myron is working through those scope of work groups and prepping the documents for going out to bid, we've got state plan reviews scheduled, so the drawings still have to be approved by the state of Wisconsin. They have to be approved by the village of Sherwood. So all those reviews and types of things are happening while the drawings are out to bid. I haven't run into this more than once or twice, that there might be comments back that we'd have to revise a drawing, but usually the timing of that, we can pick that up before final bids are received. So then they usually get 4 weeks to bid. In the meantime, we're finalizing the documents for the high school and SIS, and then those go out to bid those will be completed the end of March. 2 weeks to prep the drawings for going out to bid, and then the second round of bids will be end of April then?
April.
So Brian, can you remind me, and maybe Marta, like when we're planning to be able to move forward with the owner's rep?
Yeah, good, because I was going to highlight you on that. So RFPs went out, and we received, I think overall we received 5. Is that right, Marta? 5? Did we receive? 3 back. 3 back. We had 5. We held a meeting for a site visit. I think, did we have 5 people attend the site meeting just to take questions? We had 3 companies that follow up and respond. So Marta and I will be interviewing tomorrow those 3 companies, going through our criteria, things that we're looking at. Everything. We had them look at 3 different kind of options, either kind of a all-in, everyday, heavy type of thing, to something that would be just kind of as needed. So just looking at a range of options. So we'll be interviewing them tomorrow. I believe that we'll be able to bring a recommended candidate to you at our next meeting, and hopefully be able to start with that person then in February, ideally, depending on what their schedule is. But the intention is to be able to have them involved in assisting us with the bidding process as we're moving forward. So so we should be able to have that within the next couple of weeks. So, and I'm encouraged from the proposals that we had received back that we've got some good bids that are within our budget with what we had thought. So.
Great. Teresa, can you clarify just with the state approval, and then what else does the village have to approve? I thought their approval was exterior, which we did.
So the village of Sherwood has something that I haven't seen in any other municipality. They do their own plan review.
And is that through the committee that we've already
That's
approved
the building inspector, who, quite honestly, we've been communicating with as questions have come up throughout the process. And then I think honestly, I'm not entirely sure who at the village besides the building inspector, but I know the North Shore Fire Department will also review them. And we've had several meetings with them as well. Anytime anything questionable comes up, we're usually contacting them and say, what's your read on this part of the code?
Has that made the process any noticeably more difficult?
Not to this point. Okay. No, it's been typical to this point. The only thing is usually when the state reviews the plans, we're good to go. The building inspector will issue the permit, so it's just another review. Honestly, I don't, other than the code that we have to comply to, I don't know that they're looking for any additional requirements, and so I don't foresee it being a problem.
And then with the state, is that DPI approving these, or the building commission, or who?
No,
who
it's
approves it
the
in
Department of Safety and Professional Services.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's not related to the DPI at all. It's the
OSHA.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the International Building Code.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
I would say the other thing to highlight that we're working on right now and that we'll bring to the board in February is the schedule, our construction schedule, knowing that's going to ramp up significantly probably the first day that kids are out of the buildings for the summer. And so we're just refining that schedule right now with Myron. So we'll be getting that out to the board at one of our February meetings, and then going around to each individual staff to talk about what it means for their building specifically. When we're looking at summer school, when we're looking at rec programs, there'll be some pretty significant adaptions that we'll need to make. So looking at primarily this summer, and then what that would mean as much as we can project. So we'll have that out next month.
Is there a plan to reform the communications team?
I was going to just say we need to meet with them.
Yeah,
because we need to be sending something.
Yeah,
out.
we should get that group together.
So
again,
I'll put that on my to-do list.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Good to see you.
Thank you.
So up next, Marta has a 2019-2020 budget year update. So she sent us a very detailed executive summary. I want to, I guess, first thank you for the health care changes. Really significant and important. And I think, I just appreciate that you were able to do that in the 6 months that you've been here. 5 months? 4 months? I don't know. It's been a short amount of time, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Do people have questions?
I have a
She
couple.
gave us, okay, go ahead.
Should I just go through? I'll just fire them off. Okay.
Sure.
So I was curious about the number of employees that did take the health insurance plan. Is that consistent with what we've previously had? Have most employees kept the district insurance, I guess is what I'm asking, with the 187 between the HMO and the point of service plan?
So the number is exactly the same.
Okay.
Only one person chose the health savings plan, which is they're on their spouse insurance, and in return will pay their premium differential and difference in deductibles and copays. Everybody else switched either to HMO or POS.
Okay.
And go ahead.
Oh, no, please.
And from that population, was the feedback all positive, or was there, I'm assuming with the cost reduction so high, it had to be pretty good feedback.
Yeah. So most of the people took HMO just because there's cost savings to the employee.
Right.
As you see that the savings were split between the district and employees. And also they were very grateful with the Nearside clinic. A lot of our employees took advantage of this clinic since January, and the feedback has been very positive.
Okay, good.
I was curious about the special education fund and the kind of deficit to the general fund. The close to 2.6 million, is that more or less than previous years? How does that fall in the range of what we typically have to cover for special education?
It's a little bit more. I think the cost is going up. About 12% of our population is special needs students. We are required to provide those services. Less than 25% is being, 26% is being reimbursed. There is small portion that comes from IDEA funds, which is a state and federal grant. So the difference between what's being reimbursement and then the grant has to be paid by general fund. So in prior years, I believe that was just a little bit less, but it's around 2.4 to $2.6 million a year.
I just wonder what sort of legislative advocacy can be done. Just reading about how the high claim cost, and I mean, not having any idea what sort of legislative journey that's going to take. Like, is there anything that we can do, or is SWASA doing to kind of? I know the comment period's over, but
So last year, I don't know
writing
if
letters to our elected officials.
Yeah, and last year, I don't know if you remember, but Pablo and I think Pablo actually was the one who brought the resolution that we all signed.
Right.
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 And there was talk at WASB at the last year's convention about asking for 66%.
Right.
And I thought Governor Evers ran on a 33%. So I don't know what that means moving forward, though.
Yeah, I mean, there was, yeah, right. So that was a major topic of conversation at our last SWASA meeting, looking at the 60%, and the state superintendent and deputy superintendent were at the meeting. So they were pushed directly of whether or not they're going to support 60%, and they gave a non-answer, I would say, like didn't necessarily definitively say, they're like, yes, that would be great, but didn't say like that's exactly what they're looking at. I think my impression of that is they would love to get to 60%, love to get to 90%, but realistically looking at increments of, can we get to 33%? What is the next step in the biennium to be able to look at? I think is probably, that's my sense at least. I don't know, Clark.
I would agree with that for the most part. The reason they were not answered, at least in my opinion, was because they can't commit, right? So when they go to put stuff forward, it's kind of out of their hands at that point. But what they did keep hounding us on, the audience, because there were some that were really fighting, why are we talking 60% when it should be 90%? And what they were saying is, look, guys, we have to go through this every year. All the work we put in it last year to get to where we were, we have to put that same work into it again this year, because it's different people making decisions change, the budgets change, the stories that we had. They kept pushing individual stories on what you do with that money. Show us what you did with that money, so that they can't say, well, you're not spending it where you said you were spending it.
I understand that people change, but I mean, our elected officials haven't changed.
No.
I know the majority leaders haven't changed.
Right.
So
And
I do
that's
think
their
there's
point
advocacy to our elected leaders at the state level.
Correct.
That could perhaps be beneficial.
Yeah, and I think we have a unique opportunity with some new leadership, from our administration team, to be able to bring in voices between Julie's connections and Marta's connections at a state level, to be able to continue to reframe like what our story, telling our stories, and what that means. I think it's our probably number one most important legislative action, is to be able to be a strong, united voice around this topic, because I also believe that it's important advocacy in every corner of the state. It's not a urban suburban issue. It's an important issue in Superior. It's an important issue here, and there's a moral calling to this piece too. So I think being able to really explicitly tell our story, that's something that I can work with. I don't know if anybody's interested in working with me on that, as we look at some advocacy pieces, to really be out in front and lead on that, because that's the lever, and I think there's pretty good consensus among the SWASA districts. Yeah. That's the lever that can get us some reprieve in Fund 10, because right now, anything that we're not getting reimbursement on for special ed, we're covering in Fund 10. Right. If we want to pay teachers more, this is the lever that we can use to be able to kind of work through those appropriations in a much better way, and they should be done. I mean, the level I'd said is ridiculous now. So
well, and when was the last time IDEA funding was increased?
Right, exactly.
And so there's federal advocacy there too as well.
Yeah.
I was just curious, Marta, to my last question, looking at the reassigning of custodial staff, and how much are we sort of factoring in, just given our previous conversation with with all the referendum work, how much more our custodial staff is going to have to do, especially as we're in the thick of construction? So does that sort of industry standard stay an industry standard when we're doing construction? And
so this has to be revisited when we're doing constructions. Right now, we're trying to cover the deficit for next 6 months. Things might change for next school year.
So we would reevaluate.
Right. We're just not sure what's going to happen to this funding. We want to make sure that we're being proactive and not taking this money from fund balance. It's going to be wonderful if we receive some money. At this point, it doesn't look like we're going to. So we wanted to make sure that we came up with solutions to cover this amount.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
I think Hillary I asked all my questions. I just noted and appreciate that the way that you're balancing this funding shortfall doesn't hit classrooms, and just wanted to call that out and appreciate that, and especially that it hits your office. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Diversity work group update, Mr. Coleman.
All right. So included in the report is a summary of the previous meeting from our diversity work group. Just want to add that the work that we will continue with the members who have convened this year so far, and with members who have participated in previous years, that our plans are to continue to meet once each quarter, and then to leverage that work and that space as a way to get feedback and insight on agenda items that we've set as a district to honor the diversity of our district and then advance diversity and equity. My reflection from the second quarter meeting was that the conversation was productive. We ended with some actionable items, and what we want to do is to be able to preserve that space as a working, productive space for us to leave with some takeaways and some actionable items that are specifically tied to strategies that have been decided on earlier in the year as a district, and at each school connected to our equity priorities.
Great. I'm glad to hear it was a productive meeting. It sounded like I heard some other reports from it, and people felt really good about meeting again. So thank you.
Great. What was the attendance like?
Kelly, I know you remember everything by heart, so I'm looking to you. I think we had about 9 members present. There was a competing event the same night, and so I think that folks who typically would have been there needed to make a decision about supporting that other event that was happening or attending this. So we did send out an update in the communication so that folks who weren't able to be there were still able to be aware and in the loop of just what we discussed, and then the work tied to that moving forward.
Okay. One of the topics you mentioned that you discussed was the ACT prep initiative. There's different meeting, I suppose, but we'd like to hear eventually how that went for the first few, and then what the plan is to try to increase participation. I know there was.
Yeah. And I'll just add, quickly, we will at the end of the school year, we'll provide a report on the impact that the ACT prep work has had on students, and this is just some targeted support that we're providing. I just want to be clear on my opinion. While I think it is important that we provide some targeted support to high school students, so that we are addressing this huge discrepancy between black and white students and their ACT scores, I think that more largely we need to look at from a systems perspective how students are experiencing the district K-12, and then what's happening along that way, because that ACT score is a result of an experience across the continuum. And so we're responding at the very end in 11th and 12th grade to something that I think is our issues that or experiences that exist very early on. So I'm optimistic that the work Sam Nadolsky and Tim Kinney are leading to provide the support. I'm optimistic that it is impactful. I'm also realistic that this is 20 hours and a 5-week period to address experiences that are happening for 8, 9, and 10 years.
I know there was there were questions about sort of the mission and role of the diversity work group, and it sounded like there was some push to kind of be able to bring up like specific incidents or issues that arose from like members, and then from the district side, a wish to kind of focus on systems, focus on the strategic plan and those issues. Can you talk a little bit about the way you see those kind of bridging and whether that feels resolved or there continues to be some work to do.
There's certainly work to do because there is a difference of opinion within the membership of the group of the value and the role of that group. I think the difference of opinion comes from the perspective of district administrators. I'll name myself and Dr. Davis as believing that some of the issues that are brought up and discussed, the best place and maybe the first place for those issues to be or incidents to be discussed is at the school level with the principal and with the teacher as close to the time of the incident as possible rather than waiting for a quarterly meeting to bring that up. And then there's some disagreement with that. We also think that the establishment of the online portal is a way for us as district administrators to be aware of some of those incidents and concerns as they are addressed at the school level. If submitted through that portal, we have an opportunity at the district level to intervene and provide support to principals for that. So what I will say is that nuance and difference of opinion has created, I'll name it as tension, and it's something that I certainly am not comfortable with because there are members of the diversity work group who I believe have extremely important perspectives, and they've been extremely vocal allies, and we've since not been able to successfully engage those voices and persons as a result of that disagreement of the function of the group, and I'm just not comfortable with that. So there's work to be done. I own that there's some outreach that I can and will do to mend some of that. But I do believe it's important that we preserve the purpose of the group to focus on systems and district level strategies to support our results policies set by the board.
Do you, if you kind of had your druthers, like after the strategic planning that we're doing with the role of diversity work group, like do they have a role in kind of implementing that, or I don't know, so like do you see them interacting with that plan in any sense, I guess, or?
There have been some. So, for example, at our previous at our Q2 diversity work group meeting, the strategic planning update was on that agenda, and there was some feedback that members from the diversity work group shared that we included in the design of our subsequent sessions. And so, in that way, there is certainly space and opportunity. When we get to the continuance of that work, when our district leadership team is developing the plan that will be implemented, I think that there is value in getting some feedback or sharing that out at least to the diversity work group. I'm cautious to name what that it will look like, but there will certainly be transparency with the diversity work group so that we get some feedback about the plan that is developed. And the reason why I think that that's important is as plans are being developed, I'll name it, we don't have much ethnic and racial diversity on our district leadership team. And so whatever plan is being developed, I think is going to be important to bring that into a space in the spirit of transparency and then possibly for feedback so that we can get some just additional perspective that otherwise might not be included as the district leadership team is making those plans.
I think that's great because I was, at the original, I guess the first diversity work group meeting, and that is exactly what the purpose was, to be in that space of getting perspectives that we don't get to have in other spaces in the school. Right. And so I think that's great that that's going to be coming back around.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And don't leave.
Oh, okay.
So up next is talking about the supporting the Black Lives Matter Week of Action here in Sherwood. So thank you to, I know Emily and Amy started this conversation, and I know there's now a district-wide group that's meeting about this. So if you want to talk a little bit about what the plans are?
Yeah, and that's something that would be new for us. We've certainly celebrated Black History Month in February, but had a group which included Sam and I, Kelly Steiner from SIS, and Amy Miller from Lake Bluff, Ebony Grice from Atwater to talk about what some possibilities would be to really recognize Black Lives Matter at School Week, which is February 3rd through the 7th. We certainly want to make sure that that's a complement to a lot of the work that Youth Rising Up has done regarding celebrations to Black History Month. Historically, Nelson Brown's the advisor for that club. He was out that day, so we need to follow up with him. But we essentially got together to discuss what some opportunities were for us to be able to use that week to be able to highlight some of the work that maybe that we're currently doing, or some actions that we could take to celebrate Black history in our schools. So some of the things that we had talked about was, one, making sure, and I think we did a better job of this last year, and we did do a community event, at an evening event, if you will, for the Black Lives Matter, or the Black History Month celebration that Youth Rising Up did, the performance. But doing a better job to continue to communicate that and highlight that as that'll be February 13th at 7 o'clock, just I guess as an initial promo of that, but making sure that we have some strong communication around that. Also talking about an opportunity to share Black history facts and quotes, were some strategies that came up at all of our schools through daily announcements and that type of thing. So those are some of the things that we had talked about as a group, and we'll continue to follow up with Nelson on some things that the high school students have done. Historically, there's also been opportunities for high school students to go down and maybe do some book reads and some character presentations, if you will, on books or famous African Americans presentations that high school students have done at the elementary schools. That's been all dependent on Youth Rising Up and their availability. And we also want to be conscious that we're not taking some very busy kids and having them do all of the work for Black History Month. So we're in the process of working through that, what our direction will be for that week. So that'll be something that's in addition to what we've done in the past, and want to just make sure that we're careful and articulate about being true to Black Lives Matter and kind of what those demands are as we're moving forward with that. So, Sam, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, and I'm going to be quick and transparent. So I struggle with the approach that we're taking to acknowledge Black Lives Matter Week, and I struggle with that because, so first of all, I'm going to say, as an active member for the Black Lives Matter as a movement here in Milwaukee, in Chicago, and other places in our region where we've seen incidences where Black humanity was not upheld and regarded, and similar to what the young men spoke about earlier today, about moving in spaces in their community or having interactions in school and with law enforcement, seeing how Black life is represented in the media. The whole point of Black Lives Matter is about affirming the humanity, noticing the humanity of Blackness and Black identity. And so my concern is, and my challenge is, that we not busy ourselves with activities to say that we've done something to acknowledge Black Lives Matter. Because when I have had to say Black Lives Matter, it wasn't from a comfortable seat in an office or behind a microphone or on a piece of paper saying Black Lives Matter. It was standing in the street with rifles pointed to my face, with tear gas in my eyes, with sirens. So this is when I had to say Black, on the highway shutdown on I-43. So I don't get to say that from a place of comfort or a place of convenience where there's no sacrifice. I mean, I was willing to pay the price of my life to declare that Black Lives Matter. And so my challenge is, as a district, if we're going to say Black Lives Matter, we really need to think through, what price are we willing to pay? What actions are we willing to take to be real about that? Because for me, it's a slap in the face to have activities that have no impact, and we just do a few things, and then Black students feel identified or noticed for a moment, and then they go back to their classes or they go back to school the next day, and they continue to feel the way that we've heard some of our students talk about today. So it's unacceptable. We should tolerate none of it. And I think anytime we need to make a decision about discipline policies, that's the time to say Black Lives Matter. When there's an opportunity to make decisions about hiring practices and retention practices and the resources that we put into our district to recruit and retain Black staff, that's the time to say Black Lives Matter. When we're having conversations about policies and activities and curriculum that affect black students, and there is no black people even at the table, like that's the time to say Black Lives Matter. So not from a place of comfort and convenience when like we're in a room and we all agree. It's when the rubber meets the road and it's time to make a decision and there's a price to pay. Like that's the time to say it and to prove it and to show it. And I think as a district, if we're going to do this, like we need to put up, like we need to double down and put up or just not do it at all. So I just want to share that.
Thank you for that honesty. Were you going to say something? I'm sorry. Oh, so Power mentioned I wanted to start this conversation, and that really actually wasn't even me that brought it up. Some folks at Sherwood Moving Forward brought it up. And then since that initial conversation, and I've thought a lot about what a district district recognition of the week would mean, and I attended an event hosted by one of the teachers who started the movement in Seattle, and that prompted some further reflection on my part, and we have on the agenda later looking at a resolution that I drafted, and I guess I want to separate the issue of whether we have a resolution or not and the district recognition of the week, because I think there's two entangled issues, but what they share is, I think, a risk of keeping our recognition and observance really superficial. And in reflecting and talking to other people that I trust, I think I recognize a lot of the risks that you raised. I'm disappointed at how little evidence I see of any student voice in what we need to do as a district here, in terms of specifically that week. I struggle with my role since I'm not Black, and in a position of this, I guess, by way background, Black Lives Matter week in schools, Black Lives Matter in schools week of action, it has traditionally been a teacher union-driven movement, and so it felt awkward to me as a white school board member to be like trying to initiate anything. So my hope was that others would make space for Black voices and for teacher voices to decide what how we would observe this week. My personal feeling, and I'm trying to really keep an open mind about what's right here, is that we need to hear from students and the faculty and staff of color about what they feel is the right thing to do, and so one of those people is you, and who I really wanted to hear from, and I really appreciate your honesty, because I know that's not easy. It would be really comfortable for us to sort of like pass a resolution and be like, oh, let's, post on social media about Black Lives Matter with the hashtag, and like we're done.
Right.
The question for me became like that kind of observance of the week to me seems really obviously insufficient, as so many other things that we do as like a white, mostly liberal community. The question then for me became, is it actually harmful? I think there's limited harm in doing what's insufficient. It's sort of status quo. What we do is very often insufficient, but it's something. And I talked to other members of Sherwood Moving Forward, and they sort of said, well, there is something to words, right? Like stating principles, saying we observe this week. That does matter, but by the same token, if you leave it there and then don't ever follow up with action, or if it's not actually backed by reality, by changes in curriculum, for example, or changes in disciplinary policy, then it's empty, and it's actually then harmful in retrospect. So at this point, I struggle especially with conflating Black History Month and Black Lives Matter week, because, and I'm not the expert on this, but to me that is two different things. I mean, Black Lives Matter in schools is about the people next to us in the schools, the students who are living next to us alive today, and not about, you know, historical figures, though they obviously matter a great deal. To me, recognizing what was and recognizing the students in front of us that say they're lonely and subjected to racism every day in schools, like we just did, like those are two really different things. And I'm concerned that that kind of, that overlapping those, it further shortens the period that we have where we're saying like, Black people matter to us, Black lives matter, by saying, oh, like actually, you just get this month and we're gonna just overlap all these things because like it's all about Black people, cool. Bottom line, I'm sorry I'm talking so long, is that I would like to hear from students and staff of color before we do anything, which includes, I think, the resolution, which we'll talk about later. And I apologize again for talking so long. I'd really like to hear from the other board members. What you're thinking is what's appropriate for this week. And
I'll piggyback off at the end of your comment there about not doing anything until we're kind of more comfortable with what it is.
Can I just back this up? Like, the board is not deciding what we're not voting on, like, the district making a decision about Black Lives Matter Week. I mean, I don't think we make the decision about the resolution. I felt I guess I will speak for myself. I will support the decision you make, and everything you said I support. So if we aren't willing to double down on those things, I'm fine if you guys come back and say, you know, we're not doing it, or this is what we're doing instead. But we don't, as a board, make a decision about what they decide to do around this.
No, that's not what I was going to say.
I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah, what I was going to say was to piggyback off of making sure whatever it is that's done is close to the right thing to be done in the first place. I was going to say to you, because you were so transparent and honest with what you just said, and I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but I personally would need your leadership to make sure I'm not making the mistakes that I'm not talking about as a leader of the board either. I'm talking about as a member of the community, as a parent in the school, kids who don't understand what some of the trials and tribulations that Black students go through by any stretch of the imagination. So my point was, I hear what you're saying, and I don't feel like I'm being asked to make a decision or anything like that, but I would appreciate that guidance, and that guidance be heard, because I don't want it to be something that's just done to check a box or make sure we said something. But at the same time, I'm being completely honest. I don't know what that would be, because I don't know how that would feel if I was in your shoes. So that was my only point.
And I'd be happy to. I wasn't a part of the discussion, so I don't know of the initial discussion around what would be. So when I weighed in on it, just in my communications with Dr. Davis, Principal Grice, and Amy Miller, I did share some very actionable, high leverage, high impact strategies to be able to acknowledge the week, but then make some commitments and priorities that extend throughout the year and really in everything that we do. So not
Fair
just symbolically, but in everything we do as a district. And I think it just has to be prioritized, because whether we hear from students or not about what we do for the week, to me that may or may not be important. We just heard from students right now about what they're experiencing. We already have heard from students. There was an entire study and survey done last year by UW-Milwaukee about how Black students particularly are experiencing our district. Like, we've had that already. We've had members of our community talk about what police-community relationships look like and feel like for them. Like, we've already had. And then I'm also going to add that there was an invitation for the chief of police to also acknowledge and support Black Lives Matter Week at school. And the chief went silent and made a decision to not. And like, so I'm naming that and I'm calling that out because to me, like when it's time to make an example and to lead, whether it's as a police department, as a district, as a board, like we have to really ask ourselves, like how much of this do we believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like how far are we willing to go on behalf of students who are coming in dead last on every measure that we have in our district, right? And that can't be isolated or captured within 1 week.
No.
So, like, it has to be a strategy that we are deliberately paying attention to every day we show up to do our work here.
I don't know if this is fair to say now, but I'm going to say it because I know that we had many discussions and there were many disagreements about whether to bring on your position in this district. And I just want to say how much I am so very glad that you're here, because I think what we heard tonight, what we heard in that study, what we've heard the last however many there have been, and I've lost count right now, equity meetings and sessions and strategic planning and everything that we've done in the 4 years I've been on the board, I think is kind of coming to a, it's not culmination, right? Because the work's going to continue no matter what we do for this month or this week or whatever, but just the importance of what we're trying to do and making small steps forward and backwards in the work that we're doing every day. So I'm just very glad that you're here and that we have this position to keep this as a focus in everything we do every day. And I hope, and to your point, Brian, about not expecting the students to carry the load here, you're totally right. But I do think that I don't want to demean the work that Youth Rising Up has done historically for the celebrations in February, because their presentations and those programs have been so powerful, and I know that they'll continue to be. I just really hope that we do put our focus on all of our students in our district and not just the high school, because I said it earlier, I'm going to say it again, because I do think that at minimum we should have people reading these books in the classrooms in the elementary schools, and whether it is high school students coming to do it, which I know the students love to see those high schoolers in the elementary schools, or it's teachers taking that time to read those books. Whatever it is, let's just make sure it happens, and I expect to see it happen, not just in February, but through the year.
Absolutely.
So,
Jack has something.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I totally get what you're saying about, just putting on the face, because that's when you go into this loophole and cycle that schools have been going through for the past, forever. It's just like putting on this front that you're looking like you're caring about it, you're looking like it, but you're just going to keep coming back to that same spot. So I think that is, like you said, it's key for us not to do that, because it's so easy to fall back into that hole. And making this change can help not have to go through this, so we can move on to other things that affect Black people every day that are more important.
For sure.
So I was just going to ask, it sounded like from the executive summary that you guys had one meeting so far, and that it sounds like there are things that you've put on the table as actionable ideas. So would this be something that you would bring back to us in 2 weeks? Like, are you guys meeting again soon?
We don't have anything scheduled, but yeah, we'll have future conversations, so we can provide an update on where we're at.
You kind of have to, right? Because it's 3 weeks away.
Well, or we don't.
No, you have to have those meetings, not an update, sorry. They have to
No,
figure
no.
out what it is that they're going to
Well,
do.
let me change that. I'd like to have an update in 2 weeks on this.
There we go.
You will definitely have an update.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. And I think then my last piece that I want to share is I'm appreciative that the board has made a decision to make an investment in the creation of this position, whether it was me or anybody else in this space. I think that, and then writing the position in a way that it has the authority and the leadership to be able to be a voice and to be an anchor in some of the decisions that are being made. I think Sherwood is uniquely positioned in ways that other districts are not, with the way this role works collaboratively with leadership and teachers and students and community members. And I just think the return on that investment. So I'm, in addition to making an agreement to sharing leadership and expertise on that. I expect accountability, because I'm not here to just hold a seat, right? Like if 2025 rolls around and our results are still the same, like somebody has to be held accountable for that, right? And that somebody will be me and anybody and all of us who are complicit in outcomes for students. And so I offer like the space and reception of accountability, and then ask that I'm joined in that as well.
Thank you.
That's
Yes.
all. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. On to action agenda items. Up first is approval, a monitoring report for OE8, communicating with the board. I'll take a motion.
So moved.
So I actually have a question for the board on this. I feel like there was things, I'm just going to say this to you guys, that are actually not about the superintendent communicating to us, but I think some of the comments were about us and how we communicate with other stakeholders, and I was a little bit confused by that. So I guess I wanted just to ask you guys, and maybe we want to talk about it, like I just don't think this is necessarily about what this particular like relationship is about. Like, so the question about, like there was a comment about how that there's belief due to district policy that communication runs through the superintendent. And I don't understand like what that comment meant in terms of how we would not get adequate information from the superintendent. So, I mean, I know you guys, like somebody responded to that at some point, but I don't know if anybody wants to explain.
One is that?
Sorry. 8.4. I'm confused on that, like what that means.
Sorry.
That's okay. So the idea is like, are we getting enough information from Brian? And then this comment says.
The one that says 8.4 not compliant.
Yeah.
Board indicator 1.
Yes. So comments shared note a feeling of selective information and belief due to district policy that communication runs solely through the superintendent. And I guess I didn't understand that comment.
We have the comments right here, don't we?
Yeah, but like again, I guess I'm just trying to figure out, but the comment was the same. I don't know what that means.
I'm still trying to find this. I mean, our communication does run through the superintendent, right? Like as stated policy, right?
Yeah, but the question was, do we get adequate information from Brian
Right.
about viewpoints from inside and outside the system?
Uh-huh.
So I'm confused.
Yes, it's like, I get what you're saying. It's like two different things.
It feels like two different things, so I don't feel like how the
yeah.
comment has to do with.
I see it.
But I mean, maybe I just don't understand. Well, and so
is the comment perhaps trying to say that even though we get information internally and external from internal and external viewpoints, that it gets sifted through? The belief is that it gets sifted somehow through the superintendent?
But
I didn't write it, so I don't know.
Okay. I mean, we get viewpoints and information from lots of people.
Yeah.
Right? We hear from people here, we go to linkages, like, so that's the part where I'm like, okay, so that's one piece of it, but I guess I didn't understand. I don't know, I guess what I'm wondering is like, what's the remedy for this, or like, I don't know. So, I guess I just didn't understand what the.
I don't know. If it was my comment, I'd be happy to clarify, but I don't actually know what the comment was.
Okay.
I don't see it.
It's on page
under evidence.
67.
OE 8.4.
I mean, I guess maybe, so this is just one thing to say, like, I don't know if this might be about how we talk to each other or how we get information, not about.
I get.
So I'm not sure it fits within this, but anyway, I'm just throwing that out there.
I guess what I'm interpreting it was that maybe it is intended for the way we communicate with each other, but I'm wondering if they're saying there's something that needs to be fixed or addressed to say that, yes, we're getting adequate information, so it's not necessarily this question that that the comment's related to, but is there an understanding amongst everybody, including all stakeholders, that we actually do get that information from a variety of ways, because there is a belief that whatever information we have only goes to and from us and the superintendent only.
Okay, so all I'm saying is that that's not what this
Guessing.
is about,
Yeah, I
right?
agree.
This is about our relationship with Brian, like, not about, and that's like, to me, like board policy about how we want to get information,
Right.
like from stakeholders or linkages or, so that's why I was confused. So I don't know. I just wanted to see if anybody had a clarification for that, because that's more about our like, evaluation, about what we might want to do. Because I know there was another comment in here about speaking more often to individuals or finding ways to have more linkages, which I think, I mean, we should discuss, but that's, again, that's us. We make those decisions, not Brian.
Right.
So, anyway, I just wanted to ask about it because it was the one piece that came up as non-compliant and I didn't understand it.
And I think it'd be important to note as we're evolving these reports, like that would be a really appropriate kind of summary statement or some comments to be able to capture, like in this report, like as you would approve it, noting those things. When we go back and look at these reports later, be like, all right, so when we send this out in June again, just a reminder, here's some things that we talked about, be able to capture that.
Can you capture that from
So
me?
that's something.
Are you saying, Prue, that this should not be not compliant? This should be compliant?
I just didn't
Because
understand.
of-
I don't know what that meant.
It was marked
so.
not compliant because of the comment that isn't related to the indicator.
That's why I just didn't understand it. I don't know. You know, I think there's a different thing.
Or
I think there was a point which is valid, is that maybe the question isn't asked in a way that we can get at like what we want. So that's fine. We can go back and change. But I just didn't understand like what it meant. I just didn't understand what it meant, honestly. So I don't know. I don't know. So.
Our we all got like an email back with our comments back on. So the comment that I put said the information is adequate, yes, but not always complete. The resistance to giving consideration to dissenting viewpoints is a significant weakness of district leadership. Most information we receive is heavily weighted to reinforce or continue administrator preferences. But I still said yes, because I think yes, compliant with policy. So that comment wasn't meant to say not compliant with this policy, sort of to be critical of the structure that exists. But the answer that I put was still yes, because.
And mine was the linkages.
So I don't know if that.
But I guess even that comment though doesn't make. I think to me like we can go back and talk about it. But I mean I think like again this is specifically about. Not about like all the information. Like I guess when I hear you say that, Emily, I'm thinking about the stuff that comes at the reports from all the administrators, which I don't feel like is weighted to reply to our questions that we ask. But I mean, we can talk. I mean, if that's how you feel, that's like again though. I just think it's just a different question than what's in here. But anyway, so I mean that's helpful for me to hear that piece of it. So.
So is it, do we make a motion, because I don't believe we've done this before, where the disposition of the board with, I'm assuming, an agreement, is that we would accept the report as fully compliant, rather than.
I think it was though because the percentages were high.
No, it's because for one of them the percentage was 50% and one was 80% because
from
only
June.
Yeah, so I think it's actually fine.
Okay.
Yeah, and in either way, like the certification for me is separate from the disposition of the board. So you could vote on this however you'd want.
Right.
No matter what I put, you wouldn't have to amend. Like you wouldn't have to amend anything because that was my certification of it.
But for purposes of review of these reports, including
That's
the
what
comments.
we'll put this comment.
Yeah, including the comment in there would be important, just because we'll never remember what we just talked about.
Right.
But I do think that we should come back and talk about your point about like stakeholder feedback, which is separate, and like how we want to do that as a board and get that in different formats and ways.
Sure.
So.
Well, and we do need to do our board evaluation.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
When do we do that? Our board self-evaluation.
We should do it soon.
We do that soon.
Okay, so I have a, was there any other comments? Sorry.
No.
All right, so I have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. I will take a motion to approve monitoring results for art, K-5 through 12.
So move.
Second.
No examples, no art to share?
We had a long meeting for tonight, so
Right number.
All right.
You should do like, if you ever, do you ever go to the Bucks game at halftime, that guy makes a painting and like.
I'll
10
do an
minutes?
impromptu upside down
Yeah.
painting, and it'll turn out to be Albert Einstein when you flip it over.
Sweet.
That can be good.
Or you could hold a kid upside down.
You can get somebody else to do that.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, all right, does anybody have any questions?
I did.
So I guess I had a question about, so I guess I couldn't find, I don't know, maybe I'm just not reading this right, where you said making reasonable progress with exceptions for social studies? Oh, wait, I'm looking at the wrong one, sorry. Wait, is it social studies or art?
It says social studies. It should say art.
Okay.
That's 2 years worth of incorrect spelling. So my fault. It should say R 2.1 academic mastery, arts, and making reasonable progress with exceptions.
Well, what are the exceptions?
Yes.
That's what I couldn't
Same
find.
question.
Yes. Okay. Same question. And we had this question come up last time. So if I go down to indicator 5, percent change, I still have some negative numbers. So at any point in time that I have a negative number, I am going to feel uncomfortable. I know. But from my personal standpoint, my professional standpoint, I'm not going to feel comfortable saying that I'm completely in compliance if any one of my subgroups goes negative.
Okay, so instead of us asking that next time again, can you put that in the comment?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
But if your target is maintained, so it can't be negative. I get it.
Right.
I'm with you now.
I mean, at some point, it would be, I guess maybe in a meeting that's not going to be late. I guess thinking next time, like maybe it would be helpful to have some of the teachers come in, because I guess I know we don't have standards we do have standards?
Music standards?
You mean, performing arts standards.
Yep.
Yeah. But it'd be helpful to hear a little bit more about, like Sadie was talking about how she's going to perform for her final, right?
Yes, that's all we're doing.
Orchestra.
90 minutes.
And
well,
so
we're practicing.
And so do you know what they're going to, you're practicing during the 90 minutes?
Yeah, we're rehearsing during the final. Or the period in which we would have a final. We're just rehearsing.
But do you know, like, what you're graded on in that class?
Being there.
Yeah, I just am curious
I think
about.
she takes.
I'm not.
I
Here's
play
the
every
thing.
day, so I have 100%. But
I think that's important.
Yeah.
I think that the fact that we do it every day is significant.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that getting C or above is getting at like that. I mean, I guess that's to us. Like, I don't know what that indicator is saying. I think we've had almost every student getting an A in that class, or a very high B the whole time we've been looking at it. So I'm not sure. I don't know. We need to think about that, I think, a little bit, about what we want to get at.
I mean, because I would argue that perhaps in some of these other performing arts classes that the final is not just playing for the whole hour, but a written exam.
Mm-hmm.
There's two components in one. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm
So it
thinking.
depends.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that if you can't.
No, I know. But even though
That's not
then though, it's still like, I mean, I can't remember the last time we had an indicator that was lower than 90.
There's individual
88%.
performance tests too, right?
in choir.
In choir.
Choir's the most demanding out of all of them. He's the most strict, I would say. But for orchestra, basically we show up and we get an A.
And you play beautifully.
I play beautifully.
Yeah. So to your point of having so as we kind of try to put together some of the student achievement pieces that you see, we had planned to kind of bring in performing arts, which you'll see in February.
Mm-hmm.
With January being an important mentoring month, we thought it really important that we bring in our mentoring group today. So you will see an example of what arts are doing come February.
Through some staff presentations.
Through some staff and student presentations.
I think it would be interesting to do just given this as the reason why this is not completely compliant. While we're saying we're failing in this regard, be interesting to have performing arts grades 7 through 12 perhaps in that presentation. I think that is interesting to think.
Well, and I just
those are not slough-off classes by any stretch of the
No, I'm not
imagination,
suggesting
so
that.
No.
You know,
I don't think Sadie's suggesting that either.
No, I
I'm
don't
just
think
saying
Sadie
that
is
I
either.
think what I'm saying is that I'd like to hear from the teachers about
Absolutely.
what they would like us to know about what they would like us to know about how they think about student success. Because I think I guess for me, the
Right, is
students
that
that are getting
inadequate?
C or above is not interesting.
Yeah, I think. Well, to me, and I think that speaks to the evolution of these reports and some things that we've talked about is being able to have some staff voice into like what are the measures for success that make the most sense. I think we can also reach out to some of our colleagues in other districts, coherence governance. I think there's a professional learning opportunity for us coming up that's looking at results and assessments. So that might be another thing to see what some other districts are doing.
Question about one of the indicators, the indicator 3, reading and writing notes. Is that like musical notes?
Correct.
Oh, so
Notes that are passed in between students. Can they read them?
I meant
No.
like
Musical notes is
I thought
correct.
maybe
Yes.
like the teacher's notes said like they're
Nope.
secure on other content. Well, but like are kindergartners reading music? Because it says K through 6. So.
Yep. I mean, so within their general music class, they're learning some of those pieces. So it's very much a scaled. It shows up on the report card, but yes. So as you've seen in the past, it's kind of been a growing indicator, and so as kids are learning to read, they're also learning to read notes.
Cool. I was just wanting to clarify. Cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in kindergarten general music. So.
Again, an opportunity
Yes.
to have
Absolutely.
some performance. But okay. Any other questions? No. All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. Stay there, Tim.
Yep.
Can I make a motion? Could we have just a 5-minute recess for bathroom break?
All right, we're gonna take a
Before we do
5-minute
that?
recess.
But I just put on
You
my
can just sit there.
glasses.
How are you doing over here? You're surviving?
Yeah.
We could get standing desks. That could be a thing.
It just doesn't really release all that much.
Oh, standing?
Usually sitting's better, but it gets too long.
Right, throughout the meeting, stand up. Sit down.
None of you were here. Oh, maybe Amy. I told you guys once about how Amy, were you at the meeting where we like all sat on balls? Remember like when they did that thing I don't know, like it was a special thing where they had the exercise balls and we all sat on it for the meeting? Oh man, that was rough.
Your core was just exploding.
No,
right?
you
Yeah.
think, oh, this will be fine. And then like an hour in, you're like, no, this is terrible. This is a long time to be sitting on this ball. Yeah. It was like a special, I can't remember, a classroom, right? Like had gotten us like a opportunity to bring them in.
I think I lettered in. That was before.
Yeah,
right before I got
think
here, but-
I don't think you guys were here.
Did they have the base for the ball, or
No.
was it just the ball? Yeah.
You roll around a little. I mean, it's kind of fun.
Well, if you have a desk chair with a ball, it has like a slight back, a lower back to it.
Oh,
and
I've seen that.
It is a little.
My first thought was the base would be cheating.
No, I mean there's still movement to it, and there's still.
This is nice, by the way. Look at you.
Thank you.
Showing your
I wanted
Sherwood
that one.
pride.
I wanted that
Yeah.
one. This one goes. This is like a letter pin, isn't it? They put these on your jacket.
On the letter jackets.
No, I don't.
I think it's exactly.
You know, mountain bike team
diversify
gets.
your
Oh my
no
gosh,
letters now.
please. Why?
And we have a bike
Papa's
pin.
not even here.
We have a bike pin.
That's why he's gotta do it.
Papa.
You know where he is?
Yeah, Guatemala.
Mountain biking.
I know. I know.
Yeah, signposted those roads.
Yeah.
What time are your finals tomorrow?
8:15, 10:15, and 1:15, I think.
Same.
I think 1:15. I'll check
So
that
we're gonna
one.
move through the rest of this meeting, so you guys get a good night's sleep.
I mean, I've been up every night, so.
It doesn't matter.
Sadie, don't tell us.
Yeah, please.
I want
I'm
that.
trying to.
Especially after you just told us you just show up and get an A.
is what it
Hey,
is.
my daughter's favorite class.
Orchestra?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, Mom, I get to just go and not think.
I wish Aiden would have stuck. He did it through sophomore year, junior year, quit senior year.
Well, that's a long time.
He regretted it.
Oh.
She didn't think she was thinking, not
No, but if
realizing
she
that
just-
all those powerful synapses when you
No,
put
I think
them
she
in.
just like enjoys like like it's fun, like she enjoys
Yeah,
it.
I get it. You're not maybe
Not
getting
that she
yelled
doesn't
at.
enjoy other things. I
Getting
guess
yelled
as
at.
much.
Yeah. It's very.
It's a different kind of thinking.
Yes, I
Yeah.
agree. Although Miss Frank is kind of stressed about the trip, so she's been a little on
Where you guys
edge
going?
lately. We're going to Prague, Salzburg, and Munich for spring break.
Is she stressed because?
Oh, that's right. You guys
No
are
one's
going
turning in
earlier.
their passport, their photocopy of their passport,
Oh.
and things like that.
That is
Oh, that's fair.
stressful, yeah.
It's the Sherwood
Yeah.
way. Do you ever think the last
That's
Can't
the
mess-
Sherwood way.
Oh
Can't
my
mess with
gosh.
that.
It's this. Whatever activity, it seems to be the same.
Everybody waits till the end?
Last
Yeah.
minute.
I think it's
Email's
last
not a
second.
very
Short
email
notice.
is not a very checked thing among our
Oh no.
parent group.
Yeah.
But among your parent group?
Correct.
What?
Yeah.
Like
I
There
know
were
nice
there were
guys don't check
there
their
was a
group.
I definitely
couple.
don't.
People
There
say
was a
this about-
couple
people
that
say this about like the
I had to
school,
communicate
like,
with
there's a lack of communication. There's
the
a lack of communication
kid
in
to get
Sherwood.
the papers
Uh,
the parents were supposed
in
to sign.
general.
Is there, or is it just because people don't read things? Because I would argue sometimes it's that there's not an acknowledgement of communication. Because I'll
Yeah.
admit, I don't always read.
Yeah.
Not this
What?
stuff, but like,
You don't read everything in the Thursday folder?
that I do, but.
Right, we're back.
I get so
Okay.
many notifications on my school email, I turned it off.
Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Okay, I'm gonna take a motion to approve the 2020-2021 open enrollment.
So moved.
Second.
Tim Joint provided us with a summary of our open enrollment and his recommendation. So we do this every year. We have to, by the end of January, by state statute, decide if we will, at this point, open any seats. But we actually, and Tim can talk about this, there's another opportunity later to change that depending on how things progress. So maybe you want to discuss that a little bit?
Yeah, so we have to, in January, we actually have to identify how many formally identify how many open enrollment seats there are before the open enrollment lottery actually starts. From January on, you as a board can actually open seats as we go. So last year, you actually opened 3 additional seats in May for the current senior class.
So to start the following school year.
To start the following school year. And so what we typically do in January is we give you a pretty conservative estimate of seats that we're going to open. Last year we opened 10 seats at grade 1 and 9 seats at grade 2. This year we're recommending no seats. And that again is a for now. We do typically try to see how things shake out in terms of from spring to summer enrollment, who ends up leaving and who ends up moving into the district. So it's a little bit difficult to make a call 8 months before the school year as to how many seats we're going to have available, but we do need to do it by law. So again, I'm always going to give you a conservative estimate right now.
I know. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I appreciated the note that grade 1, this year's first graders, have increased in size since the fall's third Friday count.
Correct. So where that shows up is then in grade 2 on that table.
Right.
Correct.
So because we added the 9 and 10 seats in first and second grade, and I'm sorry I didn't think of this question earlier, but how far above our projection were we, or are we, in first and second grade this year with that, because that was kind of an abnormally large open enrollment class for what we have done before. So did we get quite an influx of first graders this year beyond, kind of what we had thought we could get?
No, not there. I wouldn't say there was quite an influx in any grade level, and with that, I'm saying like plus or minus 10 of projection. Typically, what we normally see is that there's a pretty similar number of students leaving as are coming in. There's not usually a giant discrepancy at any one grade level where that's actually happening.
Okay.
Other questions?
I had a quick question about, I just was confused why it says no aid next to K4 and K5.
Yeah, and so if you actually look back, so the reason it says no aid next to it is the range that we used within that executive summary is the range with no teacher aid. Our guideline actually has a range for with a teacher aid and without a teacher aid. We just went with the lower number, which is without a teacher aid.
It doesn't mean we're eliminating it where they are.
Nope.
So.
Correct. Nope. Again, we're just going off of a conservative number.
Got it. And then another question. So, in looking through the recommendations for staffing for special ed, the New Horizons cross-categorical group only has like half a position, and I just wondered if there's, or what the reason is for that, because it's lower than the other cross-categorical schools. Like, is that a shared, like what? I figured
Right.
there's a reason for it, and I just wondered.
Yeah, so essentially, from my understanding, what happens with the students that are attending the program for New Horizons is a shared type of opportunity for special education staff to be able to service the students in the program. Like you'll notice other categories in which we service students, there might be a 0.5 based on the amount of time or service that a student receives in special education. So students with more significant disabilities, there might be allocation of a half of a person or half of a FTE, but it's really based on the significance and the needs of the students and where they're located at any given time.
So is that the same for the SIS and high school speech and language services?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, that's split. So we have one FTE split between SIS and SHS.
Okay.
So.
And then in practice, that who or like where else is the New Horizons person is the other half of that person doing speech and language services at SHS or
No, that would be special education teacher services.
Okay.
Yeah. Cross-categorical refers to special education teaching, and then speech and language would be specifically related to the SIS, SHS split of that position.
Am I reading too in that table that we service 10 students from St. Robert's for elementary speech and language?
At this time, that is correct, yes.
Okay. So
We
they
have
come
a
here?
requirement.
They come to our schools, or we send a therapist there? How does that work?
They come here.
They come, to
That's what I
Atwater.
thought. Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
No, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You said to Atwater?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, 'cause
to
it's
receive
right there.
speech and language services
It's right
across
there.
the street. Yeah.
Can I ask about, because I know one of the things that we've kind of worked on in the last couple of years is kind of getting a better sense of who's going to be coming in K4, K5. And I know that we as a district have tried to announce and kind of get people to sign up earlier than in the past. How successful has that been? Because we don't do forms and fees till August, which is a little late to make. I mean, I know we've opened up open enrollment seats really late, but I think that's not ideal, obviously. So.
Yeah, so and interestingly enough, I can give you a parent perspective on this as well. We have not, insofar, been super successful at getting K4 to enroll early. We're at pretty low enrollment right now, and that is because we do registration later on. I will say in the district I currently reside, they do a first come, first serve in terms of choice of AM or PM, and there's a line out the door. I don't like that. I think there's a have and a have not that we then set up by who can be standing in line at 6 a.m. in the morning and waiting until 7 o'clock to turn in their registration and choose AM or PM. So I appreciate the way we do it. On the flip side, the opportunity cost for that is we struggle to get people to register up until August.
Okay.
So the recommendation is that we don't open up any spots for open enrollment, correct?
At this time, no.
And is that something you've discussed with who, aside from us and you two, who else takes part in that recommendation, that recommendation?
Yeah, at this time, it's typically our cabinet our Dr. Davis and our directors have looked through the numbers.
I guess, okay, and it would teachers support that too, I'm guessing, because of the class size as well? Do you know, or?
I'm
just curious, because I'm looking at it from a numbers perspective, and we're within that range that we recommend,
right,
from the low to the middle range.
Yeah.
And I guess I just wanted to understand more what some of the...
Yeah, and that's why those decisions are made at this point, and then in the next couple months we'll go through from a staffing standpoint and be able to see how it plays out. But we've been conscious to be able to keep class sizes within that range.
Okay.
There was some concern probably 3 or 4 or 5 years ago about too many seats being opened up, and then the number of kids, for example, at 1st or 2nd grade, by the time that class gets to 5th and 6th grade, we've accumulated another 10, 15 kids, to where we're either adding a section or, packing kids in. So we've been more conservative as we've worked through it. So that's what, between now, because of state statute needing to pass this, we've opted to be conservative on the front end of it,
and we can open
knowing that we can always open things up, but what you can't do is dial them back.
No. Well, because I'd rather be where we are now, I guess.
Right.
Yes.
Because we have an opportunity to open up if
and also have an opportunity. There's always a lot of fluctuation in terms of who comes into the district, right? So to keep it within that range, I think, is also on like the middle of that range, not at the top end of it. Yeah.
Because you don't also want to end up with the teachers or the class sizes being huge.
Correct, and that's something that
or having
I think
have another class and not another classroom space.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So. Okay, I understand now. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Thank you, guys. I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
And we have an approval of a technology fiber run, which maybe. So I will first take a motion for this. Anyone?
So moved.
Second. Sorry.
Were you wondering what's a fiber run?
No.
Oh. Okay.
I just have questions.
You have questions?
Yeah.
All right. Ask away.
I will. 1 second here.
So in the context of this is because of the size of the project, the amount of money for the project, we need board approval in order to move forward with it. So obviously there's a lot of background here. Mickey has been spending a lot of time with some partnerships. Marta's looked at the financing pieces of it, so we wanted to be able to bring this to you and answer any questions.
Sure. So from the financing side of it, in the comments it says one of the things that would be an opportunity was if we do two lines, right?
Right.
And the second one we might be able to lease out, which would make me feel more comfortable that you're kind of not only counter summing that initial cost, but you're going to have a little bit of a income as well later down the line. How feasible actually is that? How optimistic are you that we'll get people that will want to enter into those types of arrangements with us?
Yeah, so that's a good question. This is mimicking what Waukesha is doing there, Waukesha School District, in partnership with the other government entities in the area, the State Patrol. They created their own CAN network, and they're expanding north, south, and east right now. Unfortunately, we can't join them. There's a river in the way.
Right.
And some other structures out there as well. However, we have our opportunity to do the exact same thing here on the North Shore. I have talked to Jim Young at WISNET about this, and he is encouraged by the prospects of really connecting all these schools coming together, creating a spider web of redundancies. Should one fiber line get cut during construction, that we could just quickly switch over to another one, and we all just continue to stay connected. The pipe that we're looking to run from UWM, the cost of that's going to be deferred with through E-rate, as outlined there. And then the second pipe then we would own, but when you put a pipe in the ground, the cost to put a second pipe on top of it doesn't increase except for the cost of the material. So it makes absolute sense that we do that. Now your question is as far as the feasibility of adding other customers in on that. seems to be very high. The one thing that I did work with, in talking to Waukesha, they recommended the one company that I actually recommend going with. They are or have made contacts with other entities in the past with the Waukesha network to help make that connection. There are also microcells with all these cellular phone companies that are looking to access some of this dark fiber that's sitting there right now in the ground, and they're willing to pay for that too. And we'll have up to 72 pairs that would be available for lease.
Okay, so the counter to that then is if we have too many, or not too many, if we have a large number of interested parties in using those, do we run the risk of using it up so that the school districts don't then become the main users of that, or how does that work?
No, so no one's tapping into our network.
Okay.
What we are doing, we are providing the vehicle to transport the internet service from the WISNet hub.
So we own that piece.
We just own that. And right now there isn't, from what I've gathered, any dark fiber laying around that would allow for other entities to connect. Sherwood really becomes that middle ground for others to come to make that connection. Marta's made connections with some of the business managers of the North Shore group that school districts, and they've expressed some interest, their technology department, so we're already looking at building upon that. The idea here is that we would actually connect, pretty much splice fiber together at Lake Bluff, and then connect through here and then connect all the way back to UWM.
So that actually increases the strength of your business continuity plan too for any sort of disaster, like you said.
Correct.
One gets cut.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
I know there has been a lot of AT&T trucks in my neighborhood over the last year putting things in the ground. So what kind of what does this entail for the Sherwood Boulevard and the route to UWM? This isn't ripping up streets. This is just going through.
So there potentially could be some concrete removal, but that'd be on the sidewalks. It would not be in the streets at all. The run that we've asked for specifically bypasses Oakland, even though that may be the easiest run. It's also the area that has the most construction, and therefore we want to avoid that if at all possible.
And then, oh, sorry, Rita.
Well, my other question was, in the technology plan, you've talked about community Wi-Fi.
Yep.
So would this help us get to that goal?
So the couple things with that. One, yes, it would lay the infrastructure to be able to do that in the future. But I also talked to Brian about this as well. As we start thinking about 5-10 years from now, is that something that is going to be an appropriate investment? As we look at our phones today, many of us have hotspots or have unlimited data, and that really negates the need for having that community Wi-Fi, but something we could address with this type of a fiber run.
Gotcha.
Let's see. Two things. In your report you mentioned we have to do something with our internet by August.
Well, we have to apply for E-rate funding here in the next, I think I have 30 days, but it's a very narrow window right now. Oh. So we have to apply for that to have the money here in August.
But our lease is coming up.
Our lease comes up in August.
That's what's kind of pushing the...
Right.
Okay, because I would feel better if we had a stronger business case with other parties who were solidly with us in sharing this. I guess that scenario would be them leasing. If it was other districts, they'd lease the fiber from us. Is that correct or no?
They would. Yes, they would. Okay. Correct.
Okay. And then that would get us to break even earlier than the 5.5 years that you're slating here. Is that right?
That's correct, but you also have to understand that for another entity to come in and do this, they're going to have to lay fiber too. So they are, at best case scenario right now today, a year out to do all this. For us to get the fiber laid, it's going to take, they said 6 to 12 weeks to get the permitting, and now we're already looking into the summer, and then it's another 6 weeks after that to make sure the fiber's down. The deadline, drop dead deadline I have for that is middle of July, because I want to be able to connect to it and make sure it's up and running before we disconnect any other service.
Right. We have approval from the village to do this, or is that not?
So I have spoken with the village, and it's, Rebecca I met with, and we're meeting again Thursday with all the village managers from the North Shore area, because she has expressed so much interest in doing this and making sure the village is set up with this.
Was your question around permitting and like?
Just
communicating
communication. Plus,
yeah.
I do think the permitting, all that would come from.
That
they
comes
would do that, right?
yes, and I have spoken with the DPW here in the village, and they said there shouldn't be any problem with that either.
Okay. So the village hasn't raised any concerns about
No, the hardest one will be in Milwaukee, but the contractor we're looking at has worked with them significant amount of times.
Yeah, and it's obviously a pretty small run from UWM.
Right.
The city of Milwaukee has a pretty small run compared to the entire thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If we renew Spectrum in August, the minimum is 3 years,
3 to 5 years is what we're looking at.
and the cost of that was how?
Currently, we're paying $3,400 a month, and then minus E-Ray of 40% discount there, so it comes out to about $2,500 versus a $12,000 per year.
And you don't have any doubts about this?
Not from everything I've looked at.
Martha, sorry.
Oh, Marta.
Technologically,
I have
know
more.
what
I have
you
more.
stand.
No, I actually have more doubts than Marta did. Marta's the one that did the numbers.
I think that for long term this makes sense.
Okay.
Because the amount from technology budget will decrease. You're gonna have a better product, and then possibility for being able to make money leasing this to other schools.
So can I ask? So there's multiple technology budgets, right, in different places. So this technology budget is from. I mean, because we have like in the referendum technology monies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk a little bit about where this money, which budget this is coming from, and like what it's slated to do?
Yeah. So this is 100% my budget.
Okay.
So I'm taking it all off here. What we've done over the past 3 years, increased a lot of technology, increased our network capabilities. And I've also taken a lot of things that we've outsourced to contractors. And when every time we outsource a job, one of us, between myself, Jack, or James, would meet with that contractor and actually just essentially be an apprentice with that contractor. So what that has done is enabled us to save money in those areas. So we no longer have to be hiring those contractors like we once were prior to me being here. So those funds have then been used to put towards some of these other technologies that we currently have today. So in looking at breaking down with what we have been doing, the one thing that comes out is we wouldn't be able to buy 120 to 150 Chromebooks next year. We could buy them out of the library funds, which is what I plan to do, to get some more that way. But if we start looking at where we're at with technology today, we started out before I started here, we had 1,700 devices. Today we have almost 2,300 devices. We've replaced 400 Chromebooks with 695 new ones. We've replaced all the teachers' iMacs, and we've done all this within the confines of what I currently have and continue to increase this. So we have the money that's there if it's properly allocated. So we will have to go 1 year without having to get additional devices. But because of what we have done in the past 2 years, we are set up that our oldest device is really only 2 years old.
And that would just be 1 year skipping that?
It'd be 1 year of skipping that. And then we'd have additional savings of that 17,000 that would be could now apply towards getting more devices to different schools. You have to also think about how we didn't want to be or I shouldn't say, we want to eventually get to a one-to-one or have devices available to everybody. Lake Bluff is just under 2 students per 1 device. Atwater is 3 students per 1 device. SHS, 2 students per 1 device. And SIS is right in there as well.
One thing I want to add to be transparent, that savings from this project will be put back to technology budget for 2021, 22, 23. So we're
so you
going
reduce
to
that.
replenish that money.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I think Mickey, you mentioned that, or maybe Marta, you mentioned that you in your kind of conversations with other district managers, like is this kind of like where people are going in terms of like these long-term plans? Because I think, I mean, I'm just wondering if this is kind of like we've been doing these shorter-term decisions, or maybe 2 to 3 to 5 year decisions, but this is, you know, given kind of like our technology needs, which I know we've talked about in terms of having enough bandwidth or fiber or whatever, right? Like that's something else that's coming up, and so I was just curious if this is something you've been hearing from other from other business managers as well.
Definitely, there's some interest. However, different schools are on different terms with the charter, so depending when the contract expires, they might be looking into joining us. So we're gonna set up a meeting to find out where everybody is in terms of the contract.
So in this North Shore area, okay.
The one thing to keep in mind when you ask that question is, maybe a better question is, anybody thought of doing something like this? Because that's one thing when I start looking at things, I'm not looking at what the norm is, but what the possibilities are. And when I've spoken with different managers or the IT directors, nobody's thought on the scope of what the potential is out there. So when you ask that question, I think it's more of we need to educate people for a couple of years here so they know the possibilities are there.
I think geographically, most districts can't do that because they're not right next to a WISNET like opportunity at a university. So it's really it's an opportune time for us to take advantage of the partnership that we can have with UWM and WISNET. Yeah.
Okay.
One thing I would like is that then you know, that yearly expense goes to a nonprofit that's about educational access to broadband internet instead of Spectrum, which, you know, so, right. I mean, that's another notch in the column for me because I had never heard of WISNET, so I looked it up and I was like, oh,
sure.
okay.
Yeah.
So, for what it's worth,
yeah,
where money goes.
That's good to know.
Yeah, that's a good point of communication.
Any other questions or discussion?
Just timing perspective, when do you think we can get a little bit more fun when other people that'll want to hook us up?
You're really looking a couple of years.
Couple of years.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, be realistic. We're probably 2 to 3 years at the earliest. And if anyone, like the Village, for example, has just now started a new contract a couple weeks ago with the new ISP.
Okay.
So now they're looking 3 to 5 years probably before the Village is there. So those are the type of opportunities that when they come up, now we have to start planning and then knowing that we have that year ahead.
Okay.
Quick things. The E-rate, you said the E-rate funding is uncertain. That's state funding, just uncertain like all state funding. I mean, is there any special reason?
It's federal funding. Last year
they didn't. Okay.
They didn't know if they're going to renew it last year.
Okay.
So if we don't get that, then what say you?
Don't get the federal funding?
Yeah.
Well, that's there. It is
It's
set
there
aside
right
for
now.
us right now.
Yeah.
It is
So
there, okay.
that's the opportunity. Right. That's again along
I
with the
thought you
charter
were saying
contract.
it was still up in the air.
No,
I'm sorry,
last year was. I'm
misunderstood.
sorry.
Okay.
Last
And
year
it may
was.
be in the future. So
Right.
if we wait, sign another
Now I
contract, wait
getcha.
3 years, there's an opportunity that we
We may not
roughly-
have the E-rate reimbursement next year.
correct.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. That's good to know.
That's a big chunk.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Any other discussion? All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, superintendent's consent agenda. I will take the motion.
So move.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Speaking out again.
I want to say thank you to George Anton, Cindy Matthias, Todd Ross, Inga Seiler for all of their hard work and dedication to our district. Yeah, thank you very much. Good luck on your next endeavors. And good luck to the Model UN trip. I feel like we do well on these things usually.
Yeah.
I have a question on that form real quick before I forget, and I don't want, that's the only reason I'm bringing it up now. Should we have, one of the requirements on these trips is to make sure that all the volunteers go through that background check. I was looking at the form, I was like, Maybe we should have them add that on there so that we can confirm that that's actually been done.
That they got the background check?
Yeah. Can we do, just to acknowledge that it's been done?
Yeah, the only caveat to that would be many times, like, we're approving this months ahead of time, and sometimes people that are going to be volunteering, like the chaperones might not be decided, you know, maybe 3 months ahead of time. There might be a little bit of late trickle to that. So when you would see it, I mean, we certainly follow that policy. I mean, we certainly follow it. It would just be like for this form, the timing probably wouldn't time out right.
Depending on how expensive it is and where you're going.
Be pretty far ahead of time, yeah.
And a lot of chaperones don't commit until the last minute.
For example.
That's your comment about how everybody does everything last minute.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for the clarification.
Public comments? Mm-hmm.
Amy Miller, 4458 North Larkin and Lake Bluff. So going back to the discussion about the playground at Lake Bluff, I want to reiterate that my colleagues have come forward and said, when are we going to be involved in that discussion? And so that the parent group is looking at it through the lens of their parents, but we need our special education staff in particular to have eyes on, because right now what we saw was, it was beautiful, but not practical. So I think however that RFP process happens, what I heard the representative say was that it would come back, we're going to include students, and it would come back to the parent group, but let's not.
Yeah, we can include staff.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And then topic number 2 for me personally is the SEA. It comes forward in a little bit around the resolution for Black Lives Matter. And I want to share just a brief kind of position where I've come to personally. As the union leader, my stance is that Black Lives Matter all of the time, much like what Mr. Coleman said, and that as a classroom teacher, I see that literature is foundational and a way to show that we as educators understand and believe that to be true, that Black Lives Matter all of the time, not just for a week in February or the month of February. Our Black students and families should regularly see themselves reflected in our libraries, both in our classrooms and in our schools, with intentional discussions around read aloud stories. To your point, Hillary, conversations can show others who are not Black, which I think is a lot of the education we have to do, young and old, how they can become allies. That's what we need to do. We have to be intentional about that. We have to notice injustices and inequities before we can act on those injustices and inequities. And I believe one way we as educators, parents, librarians do that is through literature. And so when thinking about Black Lives Matter, taking a stand as a union, what my thought is being very clear about what those opportunities are. I by myself or with our exec board or even with our teachers in district can't change the libraries and our spaces, but we can advocate that we want those libraries and our spaces to be changed and impacted. And so my thought in a resolution was to be very clear and transparent about, partnering with those entities that give lots and lots of money to our district to be intentional about curating book lists. So all first grade classrooms have these books. All second grade classrooms have these books as a way to start that conversation, but be super intentional about it. And we're not there. And so I personally I don't think that the resolution is such a great idea any longer, because I want to be kind of to what Emily said, I want to be more intentional about just not just naming things to do, but working with those within to make things happen. So I would like to humbly suggest that we take the next year to say, okay, this is the first year we're talking about Black Lives Matter. I don't know that I've heard it mentioned at a board meeting before. So that's the first step, that we acknowledge Black Lives Matter is a thing, but we actually take some time to say, what does that mean? What does it mean here in Sherwood? And how can we reflect that? And have open and honest conversations starting right now, not for 3 weeks from now, but for a year and 3 weeks from now. So I would welcome the opportunity to continue the conversations within the district, but then also with any other groups or organizations that see this as valuable and important. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Rashonda Stevens, 3909 North Murray Avenue. I just wanted to contribute to the discussion regarding Black Lives Matter and Black History Month. And I was a student at Atwater. I remember my teacher telling me that there was no such thing as Black History Month. I went home devastated. My dad, being an educator, had his middle school class come to my elementary school, and that was the only time that was acknowledged from my duration at elementary school. And to Amy's point about literature, it is so critical that our elementary school students see themselves in literature, especially our males, period. And it's heartbreaking when you go into an elementary school and there are no books that reflect your minority students. And it's important to be mindful. I know we have book fairs and whatnot. I know SEED provides a lot of grants, but I want to say that if we're saying that this is important as a community, as a board, then there needs to be action. Not just saying, okay, here's an overarching district mission statement, this is what we believe, and there's no work behind it. Because what happens is you're continuing leaving students behind. And I have a belief that most people they genuinely want to get things right. And sometimes it's easy to say, oh, I don't want to make a mistake, I'm scared. But every day our students are subjected to being fearful because they know they open a textbook and it's not going to reflect them. It's not going to speak to any of their issues or any of their concerns. But yet they're expected to produce high quality work, and there's a detachment because they can't make the connection. And that's part of the comprehension. You have to be able to interact with your text and be able to make connections with your text. But if you're constantly being books being put in front of you that you have no connection, it hinders your comprehension. So now the data is skewed because it's making like you don't make connections. But that's not the case. I'm not connecting with what you're giving me. And so one of the ways to be able to tackle this is to kind of think about, even on the high school level, where there are some classes that are mandatory, that every ninth grader is going to have English 1. So let's take a look at English 1 and find ways to have it more integrated, so it's the social justice, so that every ninth grader is having an experience across cultures, across genders, so that they are more informed. So it's not just, what do we do to cure the black kids? No, the white kids need to know it too. And that's a way, to your point, Warren, was, I'm a parent. I don't know what it means to be a black man, but could you tell me what I could do to help inform my kids, so that my kids have an open mind, so that my kids know how to interact with their friends. And so I just really want to encourage you all to continue the work that you do. I know it's a lot of sacrifice. Personally, as a board member, But really, if we're saying that Black Lives Matter, then let's really be intentional, because if not, it's going to be insulting. It's going to be insulted, another slap in the face, and then the backlash will be, see, you don't care because it wasn't intentional. And so let's not just call out names to call out names, and it's not the onus on Youth Rising Up, but like, let's get student council involved. How does that correlate with student council? Get some feedback, because you have a group of Black kids, but what are your white kids saying about that? What are your white students saying that? How do they feel about it? Are they engaged? Do they care? And of course they do, but making sure you're empowering all voices, so it's just not on one group for 1 month, for 1 week. Because that's a lot of heavy lifting for just a minute part of the group. That's tiring, because when they walk in, you know you're Black. Like in this room, like I know there's, 2 of us in the room, right? So it's very apparent. 3, it's very apparent when you walk in a room. You know your differences. You know what similarities are. So I want to just caution us not to put so much work on Youth Rising Up, but for us to share the work, the heavy lifting.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so some reports and updates. I tabled the linkage reports for next meeting. I actually don't have a seat update unless Brian does for me.
No.
I don't think they met
No.
since last time.
Okay,
Okay,
so
sorry.
I think it's next week.
Okay. HRC update?
Yes, so we met last Thursday. And in the summary, there's some highlights that I put in there. There was more than that was discussed, but I tried to highlight some of the things I kind of crossed with what we talked about as a board before. The one thing I didn't put on there that we talked very briefly about when the education subcommittee gave their update, because we were running out of time, was there's obviously still some interest in partnering with them, or at least I volunteered to be a part of the pilot that they're doing with some of the I don't know if they're going to call it unconscious bias training, but that's kind of the idea, to read some text and actually have the author be a part of the discussion about it and how they would use it. The book is Stay Woke. They're looking to do that in March, but I didn't want to put that in an official update because that could change again.
So this was just a conversation that they were having?
Yeah, it's going to happen. I'm just not sure about the timing.
Okay. And is this a collaboration with the library?
No, actually, it's a collaboration with just the subcommittee. The education subcommittee and HRC is taking it on, and one of the members is a friend of the author, so she's doing it for a pilot.
Okay. Thanks. Any questions? Or
actually, one more thing I wanted to point out: I put Hubbard Park Lodge structures in there because I just wanted everybody who wasn't there to know that the village and the HRC is working with everybody involved to make sure they get the right educational pieces out on viewpoints and intent regarding those structures that were there.
Okay. Thank you. And then SWASA?
So Clark and I and Pablo and Marta were able to attend the last SWASA meeting. So we had, as I mentioned before, Superintendent Stanford Taylor was there, along with a Deputy Superintendent and a Policy Director. So she outlined their 5 priorities as they're working through budget development. So safe schools, investing in student-teacher relationships, family engagement programs, supporting effective instruction, and specifically she called out phonics-based reading interventions and strategies, and then effective leadership from a school standpoint. So those were 5 priorities that they're using to direct their funding. And then, so as she highlighted those, I would say the other highlight of the meeting, as I mentioned before, was the special education funding. That was something specific that I think got everybody's attention. That I think we can build a group here to be able to again tell our story and then connect with other places. So, so I think those were the highlights from SWASA.
No,
I missed
no,
anything.
no, you got it.
Okay.
I
Any-
forgot one thing, sorry, Peru.
No.
The 2020
Citizens
Academy, in case I told them I would plug it. They're trying to get more and more people aware. They extended the application deadline till Wednesday, which is tomorrow. And the first one is the 23rd.
I will say I did like seeing that in the Thursday folder.
Yes.
I appreciated that being another way that got out.
And Tyler made a comment that he made a much more concerted effort to get those in the bulletins as well.
Yeah.
So can I ask, do you know, like, who goes from elected officials of various levels of community government and who speaks on education?
They have not. I don't recall them naming
Brian's
exactly.
So,
but
yeah, so I
Brian's
speak
one
on education. In the past, I think I spoke with the village administrator and the library director. I think we were kind of packaged in the same session. Not necessarily talking about education, but talking about our roles. So
And
I'm
I
not
wonder,
sure about this time.
I don't know. I don't know of any school board member that's been invited.
I don't know that any school board member has been invited.
I'll have to find out.
But for the other one, for the
Elected officials from various levels of
that
community.
was specifically for community government. So it'd be different levels of that. It wasn't including.
Oh, it's
school
not
board.
thinking about school. Okay.
That is when
If we were gonna be invited,
David
I
Bowen
would
and Lita
assume-
Taylor come and
Yes.
I don't think of them as community government, but okay.
Well, she said community up to state.
Oh, I see. Like state and local.
And then-
Okay.
Yeah, the
President
education
Rosick.
one would be the one where a board member a school board member might be.
Oh,
invited.
I see. Okay. Thank you. All right, so we should discuss what we want to do with the resolution.
So I did, I think Kelly kindly added the draft resolution that I had. I think at this point, I feel like, I think Amy's suggestion is a good one, that we think about substantive ways to make any observance next year really impactful, and in the meantime, think of ways that we are showing that Black Lives Matter to us every day. I'd already talked about just sort of the idea of whether it's merely insufficient or harmful, and I guess I'm still not really sure about that, and so I defer to you all. I can share my initial thinking, which has evolved, was that there is a lot of consistency between the principles of Black Lives Matter in schools and our policies. They don't align exactly, and I think my initial sense was like that was okay, that we could acknowledge we had work to do, but state that our beliefs aligned with the principles of Black Lives Matter in schools. But I think you've heard from a lot of people more eloquent than me about the reasons to maybe hold off on that. So, interested to hear what you all think.
Well, would one of the action items be then by holding off on that, just so that again we're not doing anything, right?
Right.
And I don't mean for that 3 weeks. I mean taking the longer conversation that Dr. Stevens was talking about too, which was you said that the polys don't necessarily align one-to-one. Is that one of the exercises that we could do to say, okay, how do we then create work steps to address some of the suggestions that community members, that Sam has, ideas that Sam has about the system part of it, not necessarily just and I'm not talking about Black History Month.
Right. I mean,
recognizing
we've
that.
done some of that, like as a board, like thinking specifically about explicitly including how we talk about equity in our policies. But I think that's a good point. I will say this. I think that I agree completely of the I don't want this to be a token expression. I will say also that that there are districts, I feel like, I don't know what I want to say, but there are lots of districts around us that will do nothing.
Right.
To acknowledge and then say, you guys are so lucky to have Sam. And I think that there's this, not that we need to I feel like we need, I don't know what I want to say, and maybe it's not this, but I want to say something about what this decision is as well. I think that's a powerful statement as well. So I don't know what that looks like, but, I think friends and teachers and board members in lots of other places in Wisconsin, and, they're not going to even talk about it. This conversation's not going to even happen.
Right.
At any level. And so I don't know what that means, but I think, in thinking about us being people who, at least, or as a group, as a board, as a community who are we struggle with these things. And I think that's an important message as well. So, and I don't know what that looks like.
I'll add too, there are opportunities for us in the very near future to start that work. So it's not we have to put down this ball for even a minute. So Sherwood moving forward is going to host Sam to come speak. And there are also several events that are being hosted in Milwaukee. So the same organizer that I saw is coming back to South Division High School in Milwaukee to speak. There's plenty of suggestions about how to participate that there's no reason you can't do them at any point. I thought about whether we, come up with some revised language, just basically acknowledging that we are not where we need to be to say we're observing this in and that we're at 100% sort of alignment with what this week calls for, with a straight face. And I just don't know where to get there. So maybe, I don't know, if we feel like as a board that's important, we still have another meeting before the week. So, if someone else wants to take a stab at that, that's fine. I also really hesitate as a board to do anything without the SEA because, again, this is a really union-driven movement. So we could say something different that wasn't about this week, or I don't know. But
I would add Sam to that, to SEA and CM.
Of course.
And district leadership,
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. Well, how about we think about it as a board, and I put it back on the agenda for next time, and maybe not as a resolution, but as, I don't know, something else, a conversation.
And I think from my perspective, I think there's things that we're dedicated to that we already have scheduled that are specific to our district in February. So to me, one of the things is the continued strategic framework that's grounded in equity. So February 5th is our next session. That's 80 people in our community led by the school district, talking about systemic issues that are directly related to equity and specifically race. That to me folds in, that's when Black Lives Matter, when we're having those conversations. And then I think the celebration that Youth Rising Up is putting on, the evening celebration on February 13th. So nothing else. Those are two things that I would, if we were to come back and have that conversation, those are two things that I think we can highlight that are very engaging, very community driven, and led directly by the school district that I think, will make some differences. So.
And student involved too.
And and in one case, student led.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I do wonder too, though, and this is, just thinking about what you said, thinking about what Sam said, thinking about what those kids said in the beginning of the meeting, part of me thinks, and I don't think it's a useless token, I don't think it's a checkbox of this is what we're doing this month, but part of me feels like I want to draft a resolution to our students, from the teachers, the board, the administrators, to say, you matter to us and you matter every day, and I don't want to have those kids speak here tonight and feel like they weren't heard, or that we're not trying to do everything we can to repair and fix our district to be the district that they deserve. And so part of me is like, fine, let's not do this resolution, but make a statement and commit to our students that we are trying and that, you know, it is something that people are working on every day. And it's not just to check a box, it's not just to say we're trying to do this, it's that there is actually a concerted effort in this district to do this work. And maybe that's what the resolution is.
With some
not to
highlight.
it's not to some, you know, I
It's
don't
not-
know, nameless, faceless group. It's to our students because that's why we're doing this.
I like that.
Agreed, and to highlight, I think in that, we'd want to highlight key things actions that are being done to show how much, to your point, it's not just the words, and to everybody else who said something tonight, the resolution's important, and the words matter.
Well, and it's the actions, right? It's the commitment to
we
doing
have to make
the
sure
work.
we highlight what it is we're going to do to make sure that that resolution actually means something. And there are things we're already doing, to your point, and I'm just saying that.
I like that though. All right, so I'm gonna put it back on the next agenda, and then we'll talk about how we move forward on that. So there's the state education convention is next week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If you're interested in going, so you can register with Kelly will register you. You don't have to go the whole time because I know we all have jobs. But there's a long, I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look at the agenda. There's a long agenda. I would say that, you know, there are really interesting things that come up. And so I would highly recommend going to as much as you can. And then, you know, with the expectation that you'll bring it back to us collectively. So thinking about that as well, like we'll have an opportunity to share what we learned at that space. So... yeah, if you haven't done so already, just let Kelly know that you're interested in going. Brian already gave the spring election update. There are 4 candidates for our upcoming election. Clark Warren, Pablo Muirhead, who I apologize didn't mention earlier, is in Guatemala, sends his regrets. Rashenda Stevens and myself. So that election is April 7th. There will be, I'm sure, some opportunities to hear from us at different forums in the upcoming months. So, looking forward to that. And, all right, student club funding.
Yeah, so we kind of discovered that there are a lot of misconceptions amongst the student body about how,
how you can get funding, or that people thought other clubs are getting funding. So there's a lot of misconceptions that we dismissed we met with Mr. Kenny twice after our student linkage, and then we had a meeting at lunch talking to students about what can we do to help you, but kind of clearing out those misconceptions of hey, this is what the stipends, everything, this is what clubs are getting. There's only Model UNs.
Model UN's advisor gets a stipend, and then student council. And some clubs thought that student council gets money from the school,
so we just kind of
some stuff that we just needed to clear up that we didn't realize people thought. But we had some clubs talk to Mr. Kenny and how they can individually come up with a solution for themselves, which I think was really good.
And then last night, Sadie sent out an email to update club rosters. So.
Oh yeah. So now we're just trying to. We realize that on the back end, how clubs are organized by the administration is super unorganized.
Yeah.
So we're asking of the club advisors to come up with a updated roster of all the kids that are in their clubs. So.
And who we can contact.
Yeah, who their leaders are.
So can I ask so there's a teacher that's assigned that's assigned to each club? What's it? Okay.
Yeah.
So to have a club, you have to have a teacher and an advisor.
Okay. And those are if I wanted to start a new club, would it be upon myself to be
I have to find
I have to find a teacher who's willing to do it.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And then and so what you're saying is that there is no money for any clubs unless you go and ask for because you have something special that you're you need to fund, or how? Because
all
it sounded
clubs
there
are
was
fundraised by themselves.
Yeah. And what are
but for example, was it Pegasus?
Yeah.
that Mr. Kenny talked to, that's, what do they do?
They, like the publications, like they didn't have enough money to. Are you talking about they didn't have money to like fund themselves, or?
Yeah, so I think they make a magazine, I think. And last year they printed all the copies at school, which is, the ink was expensive, all this stuff, like they couldn't fund themselves. So they talked to Mr. Kenny about talking to the Seed Foundation about getting some outside funding, which just to literally keep them afloat.
And this was a good follow-up from the linkage.
Right, that was mostly what we talked about.
So the student linkage was a lot about asking you guys about how to do funding?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And this came right after threat. That was it. There's nothing about anything else but club funding. We didn't receive a single question about it.
Clark and I were like,
we showed up, we're like, okay.
So do you feel like there's a way that for
That's
you
delicious.
to
It was awesome. Yeah, it's good.
respond to those questions? Like, I guess I saw that you guys have like a, in Ripples now, you have like a section, or you had a section in the last one?
I'm talking to Shannon. She's the head editor of the Ripples. So I'm trying to figure out like how often we should do that. We're thinking maybe once a quarter, but we're gonna figure it out.
But like in this scenario, then you're emailing everybody and just letting them know, like, hey, this is what. So let me just explain to you.
Well, we had that meeting with.
We just had a lunch meeting where we invited leaders from each club to come be like a representative for their club and just brainstormed and talked about other fundraising opportunities and just clearing up the misconceptions.
That's great. Thank you guys for doing that.
Did they give you extra ideas on how to fundraise too? Because that was the big one.
That was the big thing.
Like, where do we get money?
No one has any idea.
They really just bake sale.
Yeah.
Yeah, because one of the things they were asking for were how do we get adults in the school, maybe in the community, to help us not necessarily raise the money, but come up with the ideas to raise and how do we.
And that's where I think people thought student council had outside money because we have an advantage because we organize those events that just automatically bring in more money.
You organize the event and you get the money from the event. You're not just getting the money from the school.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't be a bad idea. I mean, one idea, I'm sure to Clark's point, that there are potentially people who would give money.
Right.
Like, if they knew that there was a club, I don't know, on mountain biking or something they feel very strongly about. You know, there might be like a check that might give people who might give a check. So I guess I can say from my perspective, like I have no idea how many, like what all the clubs are.
Right.
And it sounds like there's a lot.
There are.
So, I mean, it could be something that they organize together where they like, hey, anybody interested? Like these are the things that are happening, and so.
Might be. I just thought about this. You guys know Sherwood Today, that magazine that goes out. That might be an avenue to
for sure.
get word about like here's the clubs that exist and we're looking for adults who want to mentor us or whatever.
Definitely.
Or an even cheaper idea is to put something on a flyer and put it in the rec book that goes out. Yeah. Because like that goes to everybody. Like there's other ways to potentially do some more advertising.
Is there a listing anywhere of all the different clubs?
Yes.
Is that on the high school
that's
website?
what they're putting
I don't know if it's on the website. Mr. Kenny gave us one.
Yeah.
So now you guys
but
have
we
one.
have.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't
That's
have it
interesting.
here.
Okay.
There is one, but I would think it would need to be updated.
Yeah,
more
I remember
more than it is because some of them go defunct.
Yeah.
And then some get started mid-year and they don't.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Linnell has an update.
Yeah.
Because she does 8th grade transition.
Right.
You're
Good
right.
point.
So I just had mine today. So she has an updated list.
Are you all transitioned?
We are transitioning.
All right. Well, this is. I mean, again, thank you, and I appreciate that you guys followed up on that. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So.
Great.
Yep.
All right. Board consent agenda. I will take a motion for closed and open minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. Last chance for public comments. I mean, today, not ever.
Say to your dad's not here. Is he
I
okay?
know. I don't know where he is. So
I'm worried about him.
He's
not here.
All right. Review of to-do items. Go ahead.
So I have work on getting a group together for advocacy for the special ed funding for both federal and state. So that's something we can put together. And then reconnect with our architects to make sure that we've got staff representation as part of the playground follow-up. So I'll make sure that those two things happen.
Okay. And then I have that get the facilities communication group back together to start working on communications for the spring, and then, and then having, I guess, and then putting on, I guess, back on the agenda something around what we want to do around Black Lives Matter, Black History Month, all those things. Anything else on my to-do list?
Just, so what is the to-do on that? Do we need to figure out, do we have to have a meeting outside? Not a board meeting, I meant like a,
well, they're gonna come back and tell us what the district is doing. I think we need to decide as a board if what we want to do.
Okay.
So,
You probably know this, but just answer Lynette's questions about the grant.
Okay, and then future agenda items? Besides the ones that are already on there?
I had some bigger picture questions about enrollment and probably, like beyond open enrollment, just about like projections and fluctuations. If that would be of interest to the other board members.
So when are we getting, so the third Friday count is this Friday?
So in January it's a second Friday. So it was actually the 10th.
It was the 10th.
Yeah. So right now we're just working through just cleaning all that up. So that's something we could have to you in February, as far as what that count is. And so in addition to that, I think it would be good for us to have a conversation about where we house enrollment, like within the OEs, because we really don't, like we usually
talk about it usually around budgeting and
correct,
staffing,
but we don't have it formally like sitting anywhere. So Tim and I were looking in like OE 11.11 talks about within instructional programming, talks about just balances between schools and that type of thing. So whether it's there, it feels like it's an important enough item that we should land and have it continued evidence for within an OE somewhere. So I think we can have the conversation in February around just what our count said this time and any questions that come up. I think in that conversation I'd like to just target some OE space where we can just constantly, just as part of the report, make sure the enrollment pieces come up.
Yeah, so the one thing,
That
I mean,
makes
I didn't
sense.
respond to that email, but there's, I don't know, when some of the questions you asked are you could find some of the answers to that in the enrollment study that was done, which is on our facilities webpage. I don't know if you've seen that, but essentially,
I haven't looked
it
at
shows
lately,
at like
but
growth
yeah.
rates and like projections. I think out 5 years.
Yeah,
maybe
it shows.
longer.
It shows 10 years. 5 year. The caveat is it's accurate
I
up to
think, like,
5. So we're on
the confidence intervals grow, but I
Yeah,
mean,
we're on-
the thing about it is that it's essentially it's flat anyway. So I think they were giving probably a pretty conservative estimate given
Yeah.
birth rate decline. So I think we can put that piece there. I don't know. I mean, I guess I didn't you were asking about questions specifically around different schools, Emily?
Oh, just if we've lost students by schools, transfers out, which is a sort of separate thing from enrollment.
Yeah.
So that is probably under a different topic. And we could, I probably can't articulate at this hour what exactly I'm interested in. I'll think about that.
No, because I mean, I think those are
bring
two
it up
very different
another-
things.
Yeah,
Like, because
That's
that study is very much about housing, birth rates,
Right.
and those kinds of things. And again, it said that projection, which is essentially flat, is for that. I think that question, is a different one that I think gets to the different piece. So, okay. And then other future agenda items?
I know we had a schedule to talk about the online concern line, but it's come up a few
Portal.
times.
Oh,
When are
yeah.
we
Portal.
scheduled- Yeah, when
The
were we
portal?
scheduled to?
Yeah, I
It's
think in
coming
February.
It's
right?
coming. No,
Okay.
it's
Or
next
is it the
month,
next
yeah.
meeting?
Or
Okay,
next
Okay, at the
meeting,
next meeting.
yeah.
It's already on there.
All right, cool.
I was like, the online what?
The online.
Online thing?
We call it the helpline.
Um,
Integrity helpline.
Okay. Great. Well, you guys should go and start studying right
yes.
now. And we
Another couple hours.
recess. Thank you.